All right, Mr. Chair, we are live on YouTube, so if you'd like to start, we can go ahead.
Okay, so we can get started with the opening remarks. Okay, due to COVID-19, Committee of Adjustment public hearings are being conducted virtually by electronic means through WebEx, webinar, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. Participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx webinar, which is moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone and have the option of participating via video or audio only. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We also ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. I will be muting my device when I'm not speaking. I'm dog sitting today, puppy sitting, so I'll try to keep the disruptions to a minimum. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to participant or panelist when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Members of the public and applicants are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist control during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. Land acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto, and today we're doing Toronto East York items, is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Receiving a copy of the decision of the committee, anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto Local Appeal Body, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. I'll call each item in the order listed in the agenda. That's the hearing procedure in the virtual world and making your submissions. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with a presentation if desired. When the committee does not require presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to address the committee, and the committee may ask questions and then take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I will comment. Actually, the clock is in the room, and someone will comment when you're reaching the 5-minute mark and ask you to wrap up. When addressing the committee, please start off by clearly stating your name and address, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent goes first and makes their presentation to the committee. Please note committee may not entertain revisions to proposals made at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised in order to ensure that the application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they've finished speaking. And when all speakers are finished, the applicant has an opportunity to rebut only those issues and answer those questions that were raised by the speakers, not to raise information at that time. We have some first of all, are there any declarations of interest, panel or staff to declare on the matters before us this morning? Okay, none to declare. Are there any files to be closed, so Madam Secretary Treasurer?
None today, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look like we have any deferral requests. I guess we do have the minutes of the last hearing to approve. I believe the date of that's September 14th or 13th hearing.
October 13th.
October, right, excuse me. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes, please?
I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson. Seconded for that. You may not have been here, but Mr. Palmer, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Okay, then the minutes are approved. Okay, so I guess we can start with hearing applications. The first application would be item number 1. I just have to open up my new participation list. Perhaps, yeah, here 928. And I guess on the first application, which is an application that the address, first of all, is 125 Kendall Avenue. Additional materials here. While I'm doing that, Madam Secretary Treasury, perhaps you can introduce this item.
Sure. For 125 Kendall Avenue, on file, you have the presentation materials. Email from Transportation Services advising that they have no concerns. 11 form letters in support, letters in opposition from 119, 120 Kendall, and 172 Walmer. And then I think in your additional materials, there's a letter in opposition from the Annex Residents Association.
Yeah, correct. And I see there's Urban Forestry wants condition number 2. Did you mention there are 15 variances? Sort of a large number here.
Not, but yes.
Okay, I'm sure we'll hear from the applicant. So now that I have this open, it looks like the applicant, the agent, the architect is Craig Race, as well as we have registered to speak the neighbors at 172 Walmer, who, as you mentioned, wrote in a letter. 119 Kendall, who also wrote in a letter, and the neighbor at 88 Spadina, who did not. So we'll hear what all of their concerns are. So Mr. Race, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. So this is to construct a 3-story rear addition that will result in a semi-detached dwelling. And each dwelling will contain 2 secondary suites for a total of 4 secondary suites being proposed. So that's what we're here about. I see we have your presentation up on the board. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee members. If we could please go to the next page. An important feature of this application, which is for 6 units, as you indicated, is that this site, although it has a Kendall address, has its primary exposure along DuPont Street, which is identified in the zoning bylaws and official plan as a main road. And our goal was to fulfill the official plan's requirements of adding gentle intensification along arterial roads such as this. Next page, please. There is an existing home on the site that we are placing a rear addition onto. Could we go to the next page, please, staff? And the form of the home is essentially three units facing Kendall and 3 units facing the rear yard, each with independent outdoor space on exterior platforms and or roof decks. Next page, please. You'll also see from the renderings that the majority of exposure along DuPont is where this building has its impact. I'm sorry, we can't see the slides anymore.
Yeah, we do apologize. There might be a periodic interruption. So
Okay, thank you. And the building was designed to place a friendly neighborhood, single-family home-like facade along Kendall, while maintaining more of a multiplex form along DuPont, where we believe the context can support it. Next page, please. I won't go through all the variances, but I'm happy to answer committee's questions as they have them. A few key points is that there is no parking provided in this application. That is in line with the city's new requirements to relieve parking and embrace bicycle parking and pedestrian-friendly development. This site is extremely well connected by a subway stop and other forms of transit, as well as general walkable amenities. And on the next page, please, it's worth noting there are several variances associated with the platforms on the building. Those were designed in coordination with planning to ensure that every unit has independent outdoor space. And also I'll note that the building height variance can be a little misleading. Height was taken to the top of the stair access, not to the overall height of the building. So although the variance appears to be unusual, it's not unusual along DuPont, where there are several tall buildings, and is not truly indicative of the perceived building height, which is more of the 3-story character, as anyone on Kendall or neighbors to the south would perceive. On the next page, we've included a synopsis of our shadow study, the full detail of which is included in the appendix. You'll see that any kind of shadow impact created from this application falls on DuPont Street or onto existing rooftops. There is no shadow impact on the rear yards of any adjacent properties. And on the next page, the owner has undertaken a fairly extensive outreach program to canvass the neighborhood for information and support. There are 11 letters of support and 7 people verbally supported it, but all of the highlighted properties were contacted to be informed about the application. And as mentioned, this was designed in concert with planning, as is evidenced by their lack of comment, and transportation was also aware of the parking and bike parking requirements and are in support. On the next page, to conclude the application, I'm happy to take questions from the committee. We really believe that this site is ideal for embracing a neighborhood character, but also fulfilling the requirements of the EHON initiatives and other missing middle initiatives that our city so desperately needs for our housing situation. We tried to make this something that works with homes on Kendall Street, but also embraces the density along DuPont and creates family-focused rental in an area that's well connected by transit and community amenities. Thank you for your time, committee members. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Race, and thank you for your presentation materials and your presentation. It, clearly the location of this property along DuPont, and I would say the Kendall address, is something to be considered. So, any questions for Mr. Race before we move on to hear from the neighbors?
Yeah, Neil Palmer, a couple of questions. On the parking, so currently, is there any vehicular parking on the site?
No, there's no parking on this site, and that's actually common along this stretch of Kendall, really for the whole neighborhood. Street parking is relied on by the existing homes, and frankly, the tenants who are likely to occupy this are likely to have a low incidence of vehicle ownership.
Okay, and bicycle parking, you said you're providing that. So is there a certain number per unit?
That was not a bylaw requirement, so it's not listed in the variances. However, every unit has provisions for bicycle accommodations.
Okay, and you mentioned about family apartment units. Do you have a breakdown sort of how many bedrooms are in each unit? Maybe like you have 3 one-bedroom, or they're all bachelors, or do you have a breakdown of that?
Yes, sir. We have 4 2-bedrooms and 2 3-bedrooms.
Okay, all right, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the first speaker.
I just have a comment. I'm just looking at Street View right now. It looks like there are City of Toronto bicycle rings directly in front of the property, which I assume are going to be remaining there. So that's just a comment.
Okay, thank you.
Just a brief question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Looking at the site, the rear of the site goes behind 305 DuPont. And I'm just trying to understand the impact there. Is that going to be built on as well? Like, so are we going to be facing the rear of that building at all?
I believe 129 DuPont is the property immediately north of the subject site. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, sorry, on Google Maps, there's 2 addresses. So I guess it's 129, yeah.
Yes, so we are starting to build across the garage, the 1-story component of that. However, it doesn't go entirely behind that building. So there is some overlap. We did take care to maintain exposure for any south-facing windows to that property.
So there'll be no windows facing that property?
Correct, sir. We are not able to have north-facing windows due to limiting distance requirements in this case. All apertures for this proposal face east or west.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Also, just there is no comment from community planning on this application. That's correct.
That is correct. We underwent several revisions and through their guidance resulted in what you see before you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's no other questions for Mr. Race at this time, let's hear from the first neighbor at 172 Walmer Road, Mr. or Mrs. Coulevan.
Mr. Chair and members, in this case, it'll be Mark who is speaking.
Thank you. Also, Adam, if we could start off, I guess before every application, if there are people who have left the line, we're not going to be present, perhaps you can let us know at that point.
Mr. Chair, I'll do my best to stay on top of that. With that being said, at this time, Robert Brown is not present on the call for this file, but we are trying to reach out to them.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's hear from Mark Coulevan.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good morning. First of all, I want to apologize right off the bat. If my voice goes up, it'll be because I'm emotional about this application, and that doesn't take away from the logic of the points that I'm going to be presenting. First of all, I'm shocked by the arrogance and the aggressivity of this application. They describe it as minor when they're actually doubling what is going to be built on. They're doubling the existing building, and they're going to build all the way to the back of, almost all the way to the back of the lot. There's going to be a lot of the greenery there will be destroyed and will no longer exist. There are 3 mature trees on the property that are going to be destroyed, 2 in the backyard, 1 in the front, plus a very big, over 100-year-old tree that is also going to be destroyed during the construction. It's right on the border between 125 and 123, but there's no way that they can build what they're intending to build there without destroying or severely affecting that tree. None of that is reported in the presentation. The presentation that we just looked at contains misrepresentations and misleading things on almost every page. I could go through it, but that would probably take too much time. I'm concerned about this application because of what it is doing to the Committee of Adjustment process. It seeks to use a legitimate process to circumvent bylaws, which presumably have a reason for existing. And so I'm concerned that they're using this process to circumvent bylaws, and that it will set a precedent, and that adjacent properties will be also following in their footsteps and doing the same thing. And we will end up with a neighborhood of backyards that are filled entirely with dwellings, which is not desirable. We need those backyards for greenery to keep the temperature of the neighborhood down. We need them as places for the water to sink into the ground, so that other adjoining properties are not flooded. This will also overburden the existing infrastructure. It will aggravate the street parking situation. They mentioned that they had bicycle parking, but if you look at the plan, there's only 4 spaces for bikes. It says that they're building family-focused dwellings where, in fact, nobody who has a family or a growing family, as they mentioned, will be able to afford these dwellings. They said that they had looked at that the people at 305 DuPont will not be facing the wall. That is not true. They will be facing a 3-story high universally black wall that they can probably touch by putting their hand out the back window of their apartment. The applicants obtained letters of support by misrepresenting what they did. First of all, I'd like to say that they say that they contacted us, and they show that in their application, and it's not true. Nobody came to our door. The only letter we got was the one from the city. And I have heard from some tenants at 305 that the person who came to their door misrepresented what they were planning to do, and said it was, the property was run down and that they want to renovate it. That's misrepresenting it, because what they actually want to do is double the size of the building on that site. And we'll be staring at the back of a great big black cube. How much time do I have left? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, you are currently at 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
So I'm over my time?
Yeah.
I would also like to mention that the letters that they obtained are from tenants who were misinformed. None of them are from actual residents. One of them is from the daughter of one of the owners, the Nicole Ranieri, my neighbor at 180 Walmer. So members of the committee.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair,
you're muted.
I would ask you to reject these applications.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Coulivan? Okay, if none, let's move on to the next speaker, who is Jonathan Shriver Blake at 119 Kendall.
Shriver Blake. I am at 119, which is 3 houses down from the property. I've lived in the annex for almost a decade. I have 2 kids and 2 dogs, and I really do love this neighborhood. What I love about it is the character, the architecture, the tree-lined streets, the mix of single-family houses and rental units, and the various different people who live in the neighborhood. And what I also love about it is the backyard space. I think you don't see it from the street, but I think all of us, whether we be renters or owners, appreciate the backyard space, appreciate the canopy, the gardens, the yards, and even talking over the fence to each other, which is actually how I met Mark not too long ago. And I think really in the end, I'm in opposition to this proposal because I think it threatens that space and the character of the neighborhood. It is a very large building taking up the space that is traditionally the backyard for all of our properties. And it will have a strong negative impact, as Mark mentioned, on the greenery and the trees there, and also be a looming presence over all of the backyards of everybody nearby. I'm only 2 houses down. I spend a lot of time back there with my kid and my dogs, and it will have I believe it will have a significant negative impact on my ability to enjoy my backyard, as well as the ability of all of the folks around me, whether they be renters or not, to enjoy their backyard space. So ultimately, this is why I'm opposed to this proposal. I do want to echo some of Mark's points about the presentation not being that straightforward or correct. I think there were 3 things that were pretty heavily glossed over. This lot is partially on DuPont, but because of the nature of the street, it does go directly behind one house. And then also it'll have more impact on folks on Walmer because their side is significantly further north. So for folks like Mark, it'll have a more significant impact than it would if the road was straight. There was a mention of the height not being that big of a deal. It's true there are plenty of 3-story houses in the annex. I'm in one right now on the 3rd floor. However, the extra height being requested here is for a roof deck, which is never a thing that you see on top of the 3rd floor. And so I think this is actually a pretty substantial variance and not something that I'd want to see elsewhere in the neighborhood. There was one more thing. Oh, the last thing was parking. It is definitely true that many houses rely on street parking here. However, many houses have parking. And the statement that most houses don't have it, I don't think is true. I'm looking out my window. I would say roughly half of the houses have it. And I do think that this will create additional parking congestion in the neighborhood, which is already a bit of an issue. So for those reasons, I am in opposition. As I said before, I don't view this as a minor variance, and I believe it will have a negative impact on the neighborhood and my enjoyment of my property. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Shriver-Blake. Does anyone have any questions for the speaker? And if not, we'll move on to the next speaker. So Mr. Brown is not on the line, or?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Is.
Robert Brown is not present on the call at this time. Mr. Chair, you've muted yourself.
Sorry. We also have Janet Levenstadt then as the last speaker.
Mr. Chair,
305
Janet is present on the call. Janet is unmuted. Go ahead, Janet.
Hi, my name is Janet Levenstadt, and I own 305 DuPont Street, which is a property directly affecting this project. I've owned 305 DuPont, and I'm the landlord since 2009. It is a triplex. I believe the water drainage if this project goes through will be a serious problem. I have not seen any civil engineer's report on the amount of rainwater and floods the area has had and how Will 125 Kendall Avenue manage the water flow off his roof without grass and seepage that greenscape allows? I believe all neighboring properties will be affected with this water flooding if this project proceeds without an acceptable amount of grass and trees. The second issue is the height. It is beyond outrageous. My triplets will be affected by lack of light, which on a human level is not legal, and my tenants are already starting to complain. In fact, Craig Race just stated this morning that the shadows fall on DuPont. Well, that's me. I'm 305 DuPont. I believe each home by law is required to have some greenscape, and there is not enough greenscape compared to the square footage and the number of people living there. I believe that there is a 14-bedroom home on this small, tiny lot. The number of people living on such a small lot will create too much noise based on this lot size, in my opinion, and will be a direct problem for all the neighbors. One of my tenants called me and texted me and told me that there was someone who told them that there is a minor renovation going on behind them, and they were concerned. And the way it was described was misleading and false, in my opinion, based on what my tenant told me. Why did the owner not represent me and text me directly? Because he and I have had many texts from the time he purchased the property, as he wanted to privately, because he has a real estate license, buy the property. And I did not want to sell. And he told me that that could be a problem if there was a building potential for a developer. I explained to him that I appreciate the fact that our city needs intensification, and the proper person that should be buying properties is a builder, a developer that is going to intensify the neighbor properly. And what he told me was that this would stop any development premium for my lot. And although he didn't want to be offensive, he said this would stop a developer, a large developer, to purchase several of the lots to build a condo. In my opinion, would be more logical. And he did not want to discuss having that as an option. He said once we invest in our lot, given the improvements, it will simply be too expensive for any developer to buy with the intention of combining our properties. In my opinion, if this project goes through, he will truly stop intensification along DuPont, which is much needed. I strongly object to this project, and if there's anything I can do beyond what I have verbally said, I would like to partake in, because on many levels, all these variances, which is, I believe, 15, are just outrageous. I don't know if I have any more time, but I am really, really emotional, and actually feel that all of the properties around this project will be affected in value, in annoyance, in light, and with major water issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levenstadt, for your submission. Yeah, I'm looking at the location map. So, you know, we can see how you're tucked in there affected. Interesting comment by you, and interesting, people in terms of talking intensification, adding much needed missing middle space. And you're saying, well, it would be better to have a larger consolidation and perhaps a condominium accommodating a lot more people rather than saying this is too big and we want, what's the space. So interesting concept. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Levenstadt?
I actually have,
Yes.
sorry.
Mr. Kamarick and Ms. Alderson after that.
So my question is, are there any windows from your units directly facing the proposed development?
Yes,
So essentially, they'll be looking at a solid wall.
yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Alderson?
Yes, Ms. Levenstadt, just to clarify, did the owner of this property ever approach you about selling to him directly?
Yes,
Okay.
I have texts, proof of text messages and phone calls. I don't have the recollection of when the phone calls were, but he and I still have a text thread of he wanted to definitely buy my property and was very assertive in not accepting. No, I did not want to sell to him. He was persistent in trying to buy my property. And
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank
and
you.
also, may I add, at an unreasonably low price.
In any event, that's all very interesting, but I guess what we have to go back, I guess, even from the comment I made and your interesting observation about a bigger assembly, is that we're here to deal with this particular application as submitted on its merits without sort of saying, as any property owner, but the fact that in terms of the proper assembly, because the disassembly or what he's purporting to do here has the issue for the committee, whether it has an unreasonable effect on on particularly the neighbor 305 and the other adjacent property next door, and several others by sort of filling up a lot. Notwithstanding, it is a great thing to get 10 properties for secondary suites with, I guess, 9 properties. Or if any number on this particular lot. So there's competing interests here. And again, we're the committee of adjustment. We're here not to solve the ills of the city, but to consider this particular application. So with that, sorry, anyone want to make a comment to that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to review. Has there been a civil engineer water flow analysis?
Yeah, ma'am, that goes beyond that issue, which is the first issue raised, and I figure Mr. Race will respond. That's not the purview. We look at the planning, the built form. Obviously, other people look at the issues of the building, the engineering, and the drainage. Not that those are not unimportant issues. They're not issues that we're not trained. We're not, and the Planning Act does not give us the mandate to look at those issues, but others would look at those issues. Clearly, that's an important issue, especially given the proximity and the variances for the proximity. Okay, so thank you for your submissions. Does anyone else have any questions for Mrs. Levenstadt before we put her back on mute and go on back to Mr. Race for his rebuttal to the various speakers on this very important, property that obviously the neighbors have mentioned they're somewhat emotional about due to its impacts they perceive. So any other questions for Ms. Levenstadt, or we'll go back to Mr. Race? Okay, so Mr. Race, the floor is yours if you need slightly more than 5 minutes, because we've heard from several speakers who all went.
Mr. Chair, before we go over on to Craig, I'd like to check in on an area resident whose name appears on my list of folks, but they're not signed in potentially as the name they gave us on the list. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call upon Ribaldi to speak. I think this might actually be Robert Brown, and they just inputted their name differently. So Ribaldi, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, good morning.
Okay. Now
Mr. Chair, as just a note here. No, Mr. Chair, yeah, they've logged in twice, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expel one of their files. So now it just should be the one.
Okay.
Robert, are you there still?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yep, we can hear you. Okay, Mr. Chair, we're
Okay.
good.
Terrific. So let me just try and find it again here. Okay, there it is. Okay, so my name is Robert Brown, and I live at 88 Spadina Road. I have lived in the annex for approximately 40 years and have served on the board of the ARA numerous times, particularly on the Planning and Development Committee. As noted earlier, the ARA, via a letter from Terry Montgomery, submitted a formal letter of opposition. As you're aware, the annex is a long-established neighborhood community.
Sorry, Mr. Brown, can I just ask a question? So are you currently, are you speaking on your own behalf today or as part of the annex ratepayers?
I'm speaking on my own behalf today.
Okay, just to clarify, because you did mention you have been on. So you're speaking as a neighbor at 88 Spadina. You're not speaking right now as on behalf of the letter we received, as you obviously are aware of that letter. That letter stands on its own as you're speaking.
This is a personal position.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Please go ahead.
Okay, so the annex, as you know, is a long-established neighborhood community, and if you've looked at your so-called yellow belt maps, it's on map 17. My position is that this application fails to satisfy the intent and purpose of Toronto's official plan. The official plan, as you know, provides a vision for the future growth of the city and a policy framework to guide its physical development. Specifically, I would draw the members' attention to the neighborhood's policy in section 4.1, specifically policy 4.1.5, subsection C, dealing with heights, massing, density, scale, etc. As you can tell from the application, the requested variance is clearly not within the intent of the official plan. Now, the subsection 4.1.5, subsection F, the prevailing patterns of rear and side yard setbacks, I think the neighbors have already dealt with that. And specifically, the official plan under section 4.1 says that no changes will be made through rezoning, minor variance, consent, or other public action that are out of keeping with the physical character of the neighborhood. And it's my position that this building quite clearly is outside the boundaries of the physical character of the neighborhood. In terms of the, does it meet the intent of the zoning bylaw? I believe that variance number 1 at 1.64 times the lot area, this is well beyond the allowable one. And there are 31 buildings in the immediate context. That's the east side of Kendall, between Bernard and DuPont. And of those 31 buildings, not one of them exceeds the density of 1 point times coverage. The average lot coverage for these 31 homes is 0.83 times their respective lot areas. In terms of variance number 2, the building depth of 27.51, which is over 10 meters deeper than allowed, just looking at the maps that you already have, you can see that none of those dwellings are within in the immediate context are that deep. And the third variance I'd like to discuss is variance number 11. Of the 29 house form dwellings on the east side of Kendall, only 2 have secondary suite entrances that front onto Kendall Avenue. And this is clearly not within the what you'd call a prevailing pattern in the immediate context. Now the variance number 13 regarding the size of the secondary suites, they're allowed 45%, and you can quite clearly see that they are well above the 45 at I think it's 58 and 56. And I'm really only commenting in detail on 4 of the requested variances, but just the fact that there are so many variances, I think puts this beyond what would be considered reasonable in terms of meeting the intent of the official plan, etc. Now, the test of minor, as panel members know, is not solely numeric, but as noted for impact, but the proximate owners have already commented on the local impact. Excuse me. While semi-detached dwellings are allowed in this area, the scale of the proposal is well beyond what could be deemed appropriate. I request that this application be refused. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Am I back?
I can
Hello?
hear you. Did you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I did, loud and clear. Thank you for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Brown? Yeah, obviously, thank you for that study of the, the houses in the area. I guess we're going to hear from Mr. Race is that he's distinguishing this particular property because of its proximity to DuPont. However, then there's also the impact on the other, single family, similar properties sort of on that border with near DuPont. So, okay, so and if no one has any questions for Mr. Brown, then let's go back to Mr. Race. It's been a while, Mr. Race. We've heard from a lot of people, so please respond. It's your rebuttal. If you need a few extra minutes, I think I would grant that to you if you need it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin by addressing the comments related to tree canopy. There are no trees that are protected on this site. And we will undertake the required urban forestry applications as needed. The large tree that was mentioned is far enough from the affected building site that we can execute construction while maintaining health for that tree. There was also some reference to green space on the site. It's worth noting there is no minor variance for landscaping or soft landscaping for this application. As part of our design, it's absolutely correct that civil engineering is not a requirement for an application of this nature. However, our building permit application will require grading and other provisions to ensure that any water runoff is self-contained on the site and addressed through the soft landscaping and permeable paving requirements encoded in the bylaws and the building code. There was some comment on how some of the support letters came from tenants. I want to push back on the validity of those just a little bit. Tenants are fully entitled to have a say in how their neighborhood develops. And I think the fact that we have support from tenants as well as homeowners in the immediate area really speaks to the diversity of housing typologies immediately present around this site. We think that it's great tenants support this. We do also have homeowner support, and we want to add more tenants who are a permanent fixture, who are families in this neighborhood, who will also care about future development. And that includes the site immediately north of us. You're right that this application does need to be viewed in isolation. And it's our opinion that our application does not affect the developability of 305 DuPont. If anything, it paves the way for them to embrace a multi-unit typology like we're doing as well. There was some note of the rear yard condition being affected. I think in our presentation material, we have a few maps. Immediately east of 305 DuPont, there are two other houses that extend back basically halfway through our rear lot line. So there is already existing building massing present in this location. There's no rear yard setback variance here. It's worth noting we worked with planning to ensure that we did maintain a rear yard, and that although, yes, there is development happening here, we've tried to do it in a way that respects the existing rear yard condition while also embracing the fact that this is a corner lot on a main street. I'm happy to answer any additional questions if I miss anything, but I think that what we have to look at with this application is that Toronto is starting to get pretty serious about intensifying housing in our neighborhoods. It's a clear direction of the official plan and initiatives of council and the planning department to provide intensification like this application along arterial roads. Immediately across the street, across DuPont to the north of this, is a 13-story tower, immediately north. We're proposing a 3-story multiplex that tries to bridge the gap between an existing 3-story neighborhood and what's inevitably going to be happening along DuPont Street including the site immediately north of us, which, by the way, we would be supportive of any intensification that occurs there. One thing I've heard is that what happens on main streets stays on main streets. We think that the corner condition of this site does allow it to support this kind of gentle intensification without eroding the good qualities of the properties to the south. And we hope that you'll embrace the much needed housing that Toronto requires in a location that we think is rich with neighborhood amenities and primed for this kind of development. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Race. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Race or follow-up questions for any of the other speakers? Or do we take it into committee for a discussion and a decision? So if there are no remaining questions for any of the speakers, let's bring it in for and open up for discussion, motion, whatever. Okay, so anyone have any comment or would like to weigh in with a motion? Mr. Taylor, I see can't see your hand too much, but I thought I saw your hand go up.
Okay, yeah, I pulled it back quickly in deference to standard. Anyway, yeah, I'm not prepared to table a motion right now. I think this is a rather complex application. I think we need an opportunity to have ideas on the floor here. Mine are, I think there are two perspectives here, given the location of the site. We can consider the proximity to DuPont perspective, which in and of itself would maybe compel one to believe that this is a great candidate site for intensification. DuPont's a major arterial. It provides direct access to the subway. This proposal addresses the missing middle issue, etc. However, there's also the perspective of the fact that it's on the edge of a neighborhood which is substantially single-family, two-story semis and single detached dwellings. And from that perspective, one could conclude that this is not a desirable type of building, especially when we heard the evidence of the owner of 305 DuPont. But you know, there are other similar lower intensity buildings to the east, west, and south. So yeah, I guess I just like to sort of put those thoughts out to maybe kick off some more discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Kamara.
I share Mr. Taylor's thoughts on that. I think he probably expressed it better than I would have. I also question though the process here because to me, this seems like something that should have gone through as a rezoning as opposed to a committee application. Because I fail to see how we can call this minor. It may be desirable from the broader policy perspective, but I can't see it as minor. And I was surprised that planning directed it this way as opposed to going through a rezoning.
And has not commented on the application, which typically means they have no concern. I would, before we go to Ms. Olson, perhaps could staff get up on the board the first couple of pages of Mr. Race's presentation materials, which are excellent, under the existing site, existing and proposed design. That's like one of the first two pages. I think it's page where it says the project scope. There, that one and the one right after it. The next slide. There we go. That to me is, you have to. It shows the context in whether that is too tight in terms of it's butting up on the other properties and kind of enclosing in that backyard open space. And again, as Mr. Taylor so aptly decided, the competing interests here between providing somewhat affordable, and that remains to be seen, missing middle height housing by intensification, and and the effect on the neighbors here. So that's the big issue before the committee.
I just want to add that I
Sorry,
was
Susan.
actually quite
There's always-
shocked that community planning didn't weigh in on this project. And the reason I asked the question of the landlord at 305 was because I actually think that had that property been assembled as part of this proposal, it would have made for a much better proposal, and it wouldn't have affected the quality of life of 305, which I think this particular project affects the quality of life of the folks at 305. It does give them, makes them look into a brick wall. Aside from
as opposed
water
to
runoff, aside from water runoff, aside from the other concerns that the neighbors have brought forward, I think that I'm most concerned about the quality of life for the residents of 305 DuPont.
Thank you. But I like, that's a good position. I think we get into dangerous territory when we say, well, we would have preferred to see, as Ms. Levenstad said, a larger assembly and maybe accommodate 50 families, just to throw in a number. We're not here to evaluate competing. We're here to evaluate what's before us. Normally, we had a situation at Keele and St. Clair where the councillor came forward and said, well, let's forget it. We want to see something better, different here. That was overturned at the T-Lab, because you can't do that. It's the applicant's entitled to deal with this property and can't say we'd be better to have a larger assembly and put up a 30-story building.
Well, it leads to one of the four tests, which is this is not desirable because
we can't say it's not desirable. We can't say something is more desirable. That's just what I'm trying to get at. But I
well, I think the neighbors have stated their opinions, and it's not desirable for them.
Exactly. Not that something is more desirable. That's all I'm trying to get at. Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, I think intensification is desirable, but I think this is over intensification, and I think all of the minor variances collectively are not minor.
Okay, so it's someone ready now that we've all, I guess everyone's had a chance to weigh in. Let's leave the floor open for someone to make the appropriate motion.
I've got my mic open, so I'll move for refusal on the basis that the variances requested are not minor and not in keeping with the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and not desirable.
Okay.
For appropriate development.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. The application is refused. Thank you, Mr. Race, and thank you to the neighbors who wrote in and who took the time to appear before us today and let us know their thoughts. Okay, so the next let's move on to the next application, item number 2, which is 2757 St. Clair Avenue East. It's an application to construct a 2-story rear addition and a 1-story front addition and convert a portion of the dwelling into an additional dwelling unit. There are 3 variances, and we have planning. We have urban forestry. First of all, in the additional materials, we have a presentation materials and support. And we have planning, rating. Yeah, they want a condition relating to variance number 3 and urban forestry as weighed in as well. Okay, so we only have the one speaker on this application, Keith O'Brien, the agent for the applicant.
Good morning.
Welcome, Mr. Good morning.
So I've submitted a presentation, and you're looking at the first page of there. I'm assuming the members of the committee have had a chance to look at this.
Yes, we received it in our package of late arriving materials yesterday.
Okay, it's a pretty simple application. The house is a 2-story semi-detached dwelling. The proposal is for a 2-story rear yard addition. That component is not triggering any variances. There is an existing covered front porch, and our proposal is also to enclose that existing front porch. That is generating the need for 2 variances relating to front yard setback and soft landscaping. And lastly, there is an existing basement suite in the basement of this house that was never formally applied for a change of use. So as part of our application, we would like to do that now and formally make that change of use. So there are three variances, and the first variance is somewhat academic in nature. It relates to the fact that a semi-detached dwelling is not an accepted building type in this zone. So our application here is simply to be allowed to continue this existing non-compliant building use. There was a little bit of a difference in how the wording was worded in the zoning review as opposed to the public notice that went out. And we sought some clarity with the zoning examiner. The examiner said that the wording wasn't different enough to cause a problem, but should the committee decide to grant the variances, he suggested an alternate wording for the notice of decision. But again, this is an existing semi-detached dwelling, and we're just simply seeking to continue to use it as a residence. The change from 1 units to 2 units is actually not relevant. That aspect is considered as of right. It's just simply the existence of a dwelling unit in a semi-detached house. The next two variances are pretty straightforward, and they relate to the front porch. If we could just scroll down, I've got two graphs there, both for the front yard setback and the front soft landscaping. This just positions our ask relative to the precedent in the neighborhood. So for both front yard setback and for soft landscaping, we're coming in at about the average of what has been granted in the neighborhood. But again, I want to stress that this is an existing thing. There is an existing foundation with basement below. There's an existing roof, and there's existing perimeter walls. So all we're doing here is closing in the rest of those perimeter walls and adding a door. There's no actual change to how close the front porch gets to the street. There's no change to the footprint of the house, but we're forced to seek this the variance for front yard setback as a result. Similarly, there's no actual change to the soft landscaping. If you scroll down just to see the next graph there, you can see that we're in about the average of what's been granted, but probably more important is to stress the fact that there's no actual change to the soft landscaping proposed. The way that the front yard is configured, and if you wanted to maybe pull up the site plan, it might be helpful. The way the front yard is configured, we're almost at the maximum possible soft landscaping that one can provide at the front yard. The only way to actually increase the soft landscaping would be to actually demolish the front porch, which of course is an unreasonable thing to suggest. The planning was initially asking questions about that, and I provided some photographs showing that soft landscaping. That is the majority of that soft landscaping is actually a large hedge. So the performance standard here is to ensure adequate absorption of rainwater runoff, and that large hedge is serving to maximize that capacity as it is. So again, this is just an existing condition. There's no actual change as a result of this application. Lastly, we've got
you're the only speaker. I think let's wrap up. You're over the 5-minute.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that we've got support from 8 neighbors, and we believe this the application meets the 4 tests, and put it to the committee for your questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. O'Brien, or is someone ready for a motion? And we do have, I guess, planning condition, which I assume he's okay with, as well as urban forestry, which is also a suggested condition.
I did see the urban forestry note, but they didn't mention which actual condition. They didn't check any of the 5 boxes to mention which condition they wanted to see imposed.
That's correct, and I was going to ask for clarification on that.
So, too, yeah. So
I mean,
staff, do we
they
know
don't
anything
have
about
any-
urban forestry?
Yeah, in that case, they have no recommended conditions.
Oh, okay.
Is the applicant requesting that variance 1 be changed, or is he asking that it remain the same?
That's a question for the committee. The zoning examiner has stated that he doesn't require it to be changed if the committee seeks decides to approve it as it's written in the public notice. It's close enough to his report that the application would be allowed to be able to go through. But should the committee decide, there is some highlighted text. It's the last thing that was submitted into the package, where the zoning examiner suggests an alternate wording that be used in the public notice.
Secretary Treasurer, can you weigh in, because usually you want it, the approval to be consistent with what's in the notice?
So the way the zoning review is worded is that a dwelling unit is only permitted in a detached house. In this case, it's a semi-detached. So variance number 1 would have to be changed if we were to match the zoning. If we were to match the zoning review, variance number 1 would have to be amended to say a dwelling unit is permitted in a detached dwelling. And then the variance would be a secondary unit is proposed within a semi-detached dwelling.
As opposed to what it says now, which is the maximum permitted number of dwelling units in a semi is 1. Like,
Yes.
what's
So the question would be, is the committee comfortable making that change, or do you want it to stay the same if the zoning examiner is satisfied, although not ideally
I guess
worded?
we have to look to you, Ms. Bartosik, to see whether, we want to accommodate, we don't want the applicant, once approved, to have problems. So whatever would accommodate that best is, I guess, what the committee should be doing. Yes, perhaps we should hear from Mr. O'Brien. And Mr. O'Brien, you didn't mention that in your presentation. So we don't want your client to have an issue. So we're in your hands, or we're in your end.
Yeah, I think ideally the notice of decision would be amended to properly reflect what the zoning review stated, and I'll read exactly what the zoning examiner has suggested, and that is that the text be changed to: a dwelling unit is only permitted in a detached house. The proposed additional dwelling unit is located in a semi-detached house.
And again, I assume they're going to be, this is a Toronto East York matter. I'm sure the committee, as it goes forward, is going to have a lot of applications with secondary suites in a semi-detached house based on, so if this is the preferred wording, then my opinion would be that's what we should be doing, I guess. Subject to staff indicating that they're okay with that. So is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And so I would move approval subject to amending variance 1 so that it is verbatim to that set out in the zoning review, and subject to the community planning condition.
Okay, thank you. Seconded for that motion. And also, I guess, subject to urban forestry, there is no condition, correct? Ms. Alderson? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you.
Okay. Application number 3 is, we have a revised notice highlighted to show changes. 285 GLEBEMOUNT Avenue, Part 1, which was 287 GLEBEMOUNT. It looks like there was previously a consent on this property. This is proceeding by way of waiver. First of all, it's an application to construct an oversized driveway and a parking pad at the front yard of the proposed 3-story semi-detached dwelling. There were 4 variances. There are now 3. 2 of those have been revised. And in the additional materials, we have a further revision and an email from the applicant. We have a previous decision back in November 2019. We were consent and the variances to create a pair of semis. Planning has had a condition of approval. In the event of approval, they want the front driveway to have permeable pavers. And we have an opposition letter from 735 Cosburn with photos. We only have one speaker, the owner, Zach Pantakidis. I guess appearing on his own behalf. And good morning.
Good morning.
So members, just to clarify, in additional materials, you have the revised list of variances because minor variance number 2, they had reduced it to 25%, which you can't make smaller. So the second revision page shows it as 27% with the corresponding square meters.
Okay, so they
So
removed
it's not
that
the one on
actual
screen
change.
right now.
Right. So what we have in appearing in variance 2 is now changed in the additional materials to eliminate the reduction shown here from 27 to 25. So it is at 27, not 25.
Yes, so now on the screen, you have the correct one.
Correct.
Which they brought it back to 27 and then the corresponding 9.85 square meters.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Pantakidis. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm here to present a variance for the front pad. Originally, we had a tree at the front there, and there was, some construction from Rogers and stuff like that. And what I think has happened was the original committee, when we were going in for the application, it wasn't able to get a front pad because of that tree at the front of the house. So we didn't pursue it because the forestry department were strongly against that. I think that there was some construction at the front of the property by the utilities. And when the forestry department came out to do their inspection prior to any construction on the property, they actually found that the tree at the front was deemed dead, that it would be removed. So that changed the proposal at the front, but it was already in the process of construction, so we didn't do anything then, and we were hoping to ask now if it's possible to be getting a front pad at the corner lot, which is beside Cosburn.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So thank you for understanding why you're before us, given that this property was created back in 2019 when it was built. Why you're asking for something now that you didn't do now because of the condition of the tree. Okay, and we don't have, so you're okay with the community planning as recommending a condition of approval? I assume you're okay with that. You're going to agree to use permeable pavers as they recommend?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let's see if committee members have any questions for you, or if someone's ready to weigh in with a motion. Mr. Kamarick?
So I have a question for staff. Planning refers to drawings dated June 30th. I don't believe those drawings were provided as part of our package.
I don't see that either on the original set of plans.
Because you know, the tab
It's
that
dated
says
May 2nd.
plans, there's actually nothing attached.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see what we're approving.
Well, I guess we only have one drawing A001 submitted.
They say received, so I'm just going to double check to make sure that matches our records. 1 second.
And I guess
So yes, we received those plans June 30th. That's how it states down. So yeah, received by the committee on June 30th.
And I guess that would reflect, Madam Secretary Treasurer, the 27% and not the 25% that was retracted.
Yes, the plans haven't changed. The applicant is not agreeing with the zoning examiner with their calculations, but the plans are the same regardless of the revision to the variances.
Okay.
And they've signed a waiver, so they're taking responsibility for identifying it correctly.
All right, okay. Any other questions, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the variances set out in the revised application meet the 4 tests. And I move approval of that revised application subject to the Community Planning Department condition.
Okay, thank you. We have a seconder for that. Mr. Camark, thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous. You have your approval. Thank you, Mr. Pantakidis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next application, and perhaps after that we'll take a morning break, is item number 4, 580 Indian Road. It's an application to convert a portion of the basement of the existing 3-unit detached triplex into a studio apartment and to alter the existing parking area. There are 2 variances, and all we have is a previous decision way back from May 1978 on the property. And all we have, that's all we have. We do have 2 speakers. We have the applicant, Dragan Glujenic, or perhaps, and the owner. Well, the owner appears to be a different investment company. So we also have the neighbor at 53 Wanda Road registered to speak on this application.
Mr. Chair and members,
okay, welcome,
if I may interrupt for a moment. The area resident, Deborah Monroe, is not present on the call at this time. We have reached out to get a hold of them today with no success.
Okay. So in that case, it looks like we only have the 1 speaker. So welcome.
Good morning. My name is Dragan Kljenak. I will be speaking on behalf of the owner, Mr. Marcusi. The property in case is detached, a single detached dwelling that has been converted earlier, as Mr. Chair mentioned, into a legal triplex. Owner is asking for possibility to convert existing portion of the basement into a studio apartment, therefore to become legal quadruplex or fourplex.
Okay, sir, I don't think we need a presentation, fulsome presentation. I just have one question. The 0% rear yard landscaping, is that a current condition? You're already at 0% there?
No, that was a mistake. That was a mistake in communication. I have addressed this with assistant planner, Ms. Bruna Nigro, and have submitted new site plan. On a site plan, if you put it on a screen, please, there is additional schedule that shows in detail on the left-hand side underneath the statistics. It says that backyard area was 126.42 square meters. Parking area as it is covering 55.12. Veranda is 5.9 square meters, and basement patio existing with stairs is 8.14 meters. So soft landscaping is 57.22 square meters, which is 45% of backyard. In conversation with Ms. Negro, who is assistant planner, she actually sent to me confirmation that as long as it is not zero, which is not, she will be okay with the proposed reduction. As far as the second objection that came from zoning notice, width of the parkings are, as of now, required to be 2.6 meters. Reduction, if we have 4 parking spots, will be 6% in width, which is 2.44 meters. So reduction is 6% in width.
Sir, thank you for that. So are you asking then that variance number 1 be revised to show you're providing some rear yard landscaping?
45.3 exactly.
Okay, so you're providing 5.3 square meters?
No, 57.22, which is 45.3%.
Okay, so that's what you're providing. So you're asking that we change that to 45%.
Yes.
Okay. Staff, do you have any comment on that? It makes the situation considerably better than what's shown in the notice.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the applicant revised his plans from what he submitted to Toronto Building for his zoning review, which you're not supposed to do. So his plans do not match the zoning review. So he should have submitted a waiver addressing that variance. So I just want to clarify, you're changing variance number 1 to say a total of 45.3% of the rear yard will be soft landscaping.
That's been submitted after notice was received immediately.
I know, but you're not supposed to change your plans if you're submitting a zoning review for future reference. Okay?
I was not aware of this. I apologize. It's none of the people that I communicated with actually asked for for waiver to be. I'm sorry about that. It's
well, we didn't know you changed your plans, right?
No, plans were not changed. Just to clarify,
I did look at your plans. The plans submitted for your zoning review do not mention any soft landscaping, which you do mention here.
Yes, that was.
So that is a changed plan.
I cannot comment on that. Yeah, I mean, if that is the case.
Okay, at least what we know for today's purpose, what we have before us, I'm asking the members to consider the revision to that variance as Madam Secretary Treasurer just outlined. And let's see, as opposed to hopefully next time, whatever's done is before us and we know let's move forward. So does anyone have any further questions or is someone ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to bring to your attention that the area resident, Deborah Monroe, might be on the call now. With that being said, they haven't authorized the use of their microphone. Deborah, if you're on the line right now and you'd like to speak this afternoon, you need to log out and log back in and authorize the use of your microphone, because at this time I cannot mute or unmute you to allow you to speak. So, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up into your hands. Deborah is now on the call.
Well, we have to know, are we just gonna try to get us some indication or just wait to see if they happen to be online or is it gonna log back in? How long is that gonna take? So let's, can we establish rather quickly whether we're gonna be able to make contact and whether the person is in fact on the line?
Mr. Chair, they
That
have
you may
logged
be on the
in,
line.
but they have not authorized the use of their microphone at this time. So if Deborah can hear me, if you can log out and log back in and make sure you authorize the use of your microphone, then we'll be able to have you speak to this item. Otherwise, we won't be able to have you speak. Mr. Chair, they have logged out. They have logged out now, so I think they did understand the requirements. So if we bear with us for a moment.
Okay. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, a question for Mr. Klimek. Sir, a few minutes ago, you said regarding variance 2 that the altered parking area will have a width of 2.44 meters. Your application is for a width of 2.42 meters. It's a minor change, but do you wish the variance 2 to be adjusted as well?
Yes, because in the meantime, it has to, when this was recalculated, when the zoning examiner, I don't know why they didn't push the to be clarified right away, size of soft landscaping. At the same time, new survey was requested, and the new survey showed accurate width of the lot at 9.76 meters rather than 9.5. So when the calculation is done, this difference of few centimeters occurred. That was and it is better for us now. It's 2.44 instead of 2.4.
Your plans show 2.42.
Yes, I do apologize that there was this last moment adjustment, but the facts now are as I am presenting. So I'm actually begging to take in consideration that this last data is actually factual, because in front of you have revised drawing and you have actual survey also. So these are factual.
Sir, okay, let's not belabor the point. It's a 0.02 of a meter. The question Mr. Taylor posed for you, you want to leave it in the abundance of caution at 2.42 or change it to 2.44 to be consistent. That's the big issue here. And then we'll see if we have the neighbor on the line.
Members, I think he's being generous if he rounds up, because if I divide 9.75, I get 2.43. And it's not safe to round up because he may not get a permit afterwards.
Let's leave it at 2.42 would be my suggestion, because who doesn't really matter, and it's, you don't want to have an issue over 0.01 of a meter. Do we have Ms. Monroe on the line?
Mr. Chair, members, Ms. Monroe is not present on the call just yet, but I am continuing to hit refresh, and as soon as she reappears, I will let you know.
Okay. She is located where in proximity to 53 Wanda Road. I'm just trying to understand what where that is in relation to the property. It looks like it backs onto Swansea Mews and then backs onto Greenbelt. So on my location map, I don't see this location, and I guess if she hasn't been able to get on the line, I suggest we move forward. I'm ready for a motion. Very simple variance. In fact, there is a very much more modest landscape. So there's two extremely minor or pretty minor variances here. So I don't know who Ms. Monroe is, but we've waited long enough, I think. Adam, are we, unless she's back on the line at this point, let's just see if committee members have any questions or ready to weigh in with a motion. Mr. Kumar.
If there's no questions, I'm good to propose a motion that the application be approved. I believe it meets the 4 tests as revised with respect to variance 1.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kamara. Seconder for that motion. Mr. Taylor, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Lee Klenak. Dragon. We'll call you Dragon for sure. Okay, so thank you. Have your variance. Your application has been approved. It's now 11 o'clock, and I propose we have a 15-minute break at this point. And perhaps during that time, the moderator, Adam, you can check. It looks like we have 8 neighbors present, whether we do in fact have all of them on the line. Yeah, 8 neighbors in addition to the applicant. So perhaps we can establish that during the break, and we'll see everyone back here at 11:15. We're fresh to go ahead with application number 548 Cohill. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So our next application, if we're ready to go, is item number 5, 48 Cohill Drive. It's an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling. And there are 14 variances. We have supporting material and presentation. TRCA has no objection. We have a letter of opposition. I think the same one also, concern letter in the additional materials. We have 3 support letters. And we have a handwritten letter. We have 50 in a letter from the neighbor right next door. Petition with 8 signatures in opposition. And the neighbor would like to find out, because the neighbor that wrote in as a concerned resident of Swansea, I think we need an address for that neighbor, but perhaps we'll hear. He's one of the speakers. Yeah, 274 Ellis. So we have everyone before us. The applicant is Mehdi Ajvand, agent for the applicant and architect. So I'll turn the floor over to Mehdi.
Good morning, committee panel. Thank you for your time. Before going through the presentation, there are some improvements in our minor variance requested. I would like to indicate it on the hearing. May I go through the improvement in the public hearing notice?
Okay, you're saying that out of the 14 variances, you're making some changes to eliminate or reduce some variances?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, please proceed with that.
So just to clarify, members, we do not have plans that go with these revisions, which means none of the neighbors have seen any revisions either.
There won't be any changes on the drawing. Actually, it was just based on the misinterpretation of the drawing. I did communicate with the zoning examiner about that, but it wasn't enough time to receive the updated notice. But there is all these changes that I apply on the public notice. There won't be any changes on the drawing. So basically, okay. Yeah. So variance number 4 regarding the front wall height is eliminated. Variance number 5 for the rear wall height is eliminated. Variance number 6 for the side exterior main wall height is eliminated. Variance number 10 regarding the platform at the front no higher than the first floor is eliminated. Variance number 14 regarding the exterior stairs is eliminated as well. And regarding the variance number 9, we have an improvement over there. It's governed for the platform area. We still have this variance for the front platform that we have. The area is 19.04, but the variance for the rear platform has been eliminated.
Sir, Neil Palmer here. While you're reviewing your variances, can you confirm variance number 2 for the side yard? I'm looking at your site plan, and it indicates it's 0.9.
It is there, and in the supportive document, I'm going to show it. It's just for the front portion of the second floor, so it's not indicated strongly on the site plan, but on the second floor plan and on the 3D view that I have in my supporting document, I'm going to go through that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So this project actually located, it has very exceptional and unusual condition. Before going through the variances, I just give you a very brief. I know that we do have so many neighbors attending there, don't want to waste the time. So this property is located on the west side of Cohill Drive. Cohill Drive, there is a catfish pond at the east side of Cohill Drive in front of our property, as you can see in my supportive document. So there is no neighboring or any residential property on the east side of this property. Actually, and also we have a community housing, poor maintained community housing at the rear of this property, which all of the neighbors suffered from so many issues with them, like several shooting, throwing garbage, eggs, those kind of things. It's a common problem in a neighborhood, happens from the poor maintained community housing at the back of this property and all other neighbors that we have over there. And When our client who are living in this house for about 10 years now, they approach us and asking for a design because they are healthcare worker, and after tough time they had during COVID, they decided to bring their parents to live with them at the same house. So we had to design a house for a family, including for seniors. So accessibility was a challenge for us, and we also have some technicality and a limit that we had. We had several communication with the TRCA, and also we did communicate with the planner of the case, Ms. Bruno over there, to be able to propose something well fit in the neighborhood, and also at the same time address all the item my client wanted. The proposal is for 2,200 square feet house. It is just a 3-bedroom house in 2-bedroom, and this is addition renovation, proposed addition on the second floor and interior alteration in the main floor. In terms of all building envelope stat that we have, I believe that it's well fitted in a neighborhood because we could come up with very modest applications. If I go through the variances over there, the first variances is for the GFA. As I said, it's just a 2,200 square feet house, and on the second page of on the first page of my supportive document, I also brought up some similar cases in the neighborhood. These numbers are very common. Even our requested variance 0.67 is not even on the top of what it was approved in the neighborhood. And also considering the size, 2,200 for this size of property, it's very modest application. For the side yard setback, if we go to the second page of my supportive document, what we are asking for that on the second page, please. Is exactly. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. The variances is just only for the red portion of side lot line that we have. The green one and also the blue one has setback more than required. On the green portion, we have 2.4 meter setback. On the blue portion, we have 1.87. And those variants, 19 centimeter, is just for that projection we have at the front portion of the house, which is basically 34% of building length, and in one story on a second floor. So basically nothing gonna touch the ground. The actual setback that fill is gonna be 2.4 meter over there. Regarding the height variance, total height variance, if we can go to the third page of my presentation, at the bottom corner, I tried to show the height variances over there. If you look at those small red triangle over there, it's just the variances is just for that portion. Considering the fact that our wall height, our side wall height that we are proposing even is 20 centimeter less than what we are allowed. And this total height variances is just for that portion. I believe even the mass of building is it's not interfere with anything like a shadowing, overviewing, even building mass. That height variance on the old bylaw and new bylaw is just for that red triangle that we have over there. A whole other variance that we have, if I can have the top corner of the same page of supportive document, all other variance that we have is just relating to the front deck and porch that we are proposing over there. As I said, the rear community housing located at the back of this property, considering all issue that all the neighborhood had it, I believe that all other neighbors can confirm the situation with the shooting, throwing garbage, those kind of things. It's not social friendly backyard. That's why, and also there is a catfish on the other side of the street that we are proposing, and there is no other neighbor. The main reason for this platform is proposing a platform on the second floor to be able to use as an accessibility deck. The rear deck that is common in all the properties, we are proposing it over there, looking to the public space, not any private space. For the porch at the main floor, we are keeping the existing porch as it is and just proposing a balcony on top of that. This project is addition renovation, and the reason that we kept the existing porch as it is, it was because there is like a concrete wall over there, and we didn't want to interfere with the existing condition of front yard, all those kind of things. And that platform on the second floor, as I said, is looking to the public. Yeah, we have to apply for a variance for the area of that.
Mr. You're going to have to wrap up your over your time. I've allowed you to go on a little extra because we do have eight speakers. But if I let you just try to wrap up.
Okay, just two items for the variance number 13 regarding the front landscaping. It's an existing condition. We don't change anything. The existing condition is having 48% landscaping over there. And also, I would like to say we do have the GRCA support for this proposal, and also the planner of the case has supported this application. I prefer to hear all other neighbor concerns to address them after.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions for the agent before we start hearing from the neighbors? Okay, so we do have 8 neighbors, at least on my list. Adam, are all these people present on the line?
Mr. Chair, members, most are present on the line. As we work through them, I can let you know. The first.
Okay, thank you. The first speaker?
The first speaker, Jim Brown, is not present on the call at this time. We have reached out to them, though, and have not yet made communication.
Okay, the next one is Freddie Ung from 6 Cohill.
Mr. Chair, members,
online?
Freddie Ung is not present on the call at this time. We have reached out to them, but we still have not made communication.
Okay, he's quite a distance away at number 6. In any event, next speaker is right next door. 50 Cohill, hopefully they're on the line. Cheryl Danpal or Fareed Omardine.
In this case, Mr. Chair, it will be Cheryl speaking.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl Danpal. I just wanted for the records to know that the petition numbers 11 neighbors from Cohill Drive and 5 from the opposite street at Ellis Avenue. And the Toronto Community Housing has been closed off. There's no one living there right now. I think everyone knows about that from the news. Okay, so my name is Cheryl Danpal. My husband Fareed Omardine, he's here with me today. Please have the schedules A and D ready for viewing when requested. We are the owners of 50 Cohill Drive, which is next to and will be directly affected by the proposed variances requested for number 48. Many concerns were flagged regarding the adverse effects this massive structure provides, as well as being intrusive, all because of the almost doubling of the FSI or floor space index, together with the additional building height, including the height of the 4 walls. The impact to our quality of life, being seniors, and our everyday personal enjoyment will be greatly diminished. This will severely affect my family's mental health and physical well-being. I'm also working in a hybrid environment at the Ministry of Health, where I work at least 3 days at home and 2 days in the office, and getting sunlight is an important asset in making this hybrid work-life balance work for us. In effect, there will be shadowing of the surrounding properties, and in particular, this bill will overshadow our home where we have lived for the past 23 years. We will no longer have sunlight throughout the day, weather and season permitted, of course. And I like to add about seasonal affective disorder, also known as winter depression. And please, can you pull up the photos for Schedule A and D, please? As you can see from this view, from the living room, we have an unobstructed view right now throughout all the windows. The living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, you can flip through. And the other one, that's the bathroom. We have unobstructed view. We can see the sun. It comes into the house. Once there's sunlight, there's a view from the windows from the street view, the back of the yard, and then we can go down to number D, Schedule D, where you can see there's some sun rays that are coming through the basement windows. We need to get to Schedule D, please. Okay, I guess we have some technical problems. Yeah, so here we have a view of the sun coming through the back of the basement window, and correspondingly the other windows to the back of the house also has sun coming through. So additionally, being an avid gardener and being accustomed to spending many outside in my backyard, my daughter, who lives not too far, actually shares this interest with us. This bill would affect my passion for gardening, as the blocking of direct sunlight will compromise the existing green space. The plants and flowers will actually have a struggle to survive. This will also have a negative impact on our right to our personal enjoyment of a backyard garden. The proposed bill would be transformed from a modest single-story detached dwelling to an imposing 2+ story structure with extended platforms at the front and rear, thus raising privacy issues. Furthermore, the character of this new bill will interrupt the flowing line of sight of our charming street. Please refer to Schedule B. We are concerned these changes will seriously alter the nature and intensity of use and underline the prevailing look and feel of our street, Cohill Drive, in the Swansea neighborhood. Neighbors who live to the north and south of number 48 Cohill Drive also voiced their concerns and objected to this proposal, either by email, written communication, and or by signing the petition. I mentioned those names before. So in a nutshell, it's too large, it's too deep, and too high for the lot size, and the proposal fails the 4 tests. We are all for modernization and development, however, within reason. However, we also reject this proposal as stated. And just to add, those slide plans that were submitted were beyond the due date, and the 2 people who signed for those letters are not on Cohill Drive. They live in an apartment. The other person, I believe, is one of the neighbors on 52. So thank you for your time, Chairperson and committee members. I appreciate your time for taking and listening to us. Cheryl and Frieda, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dan Paul. Does anyone have any questions for the speaker before we move on to the next speaker? Okay, the next speaker on my list is Nicholas Singh from 209 Willard Avenue. Area resident shown.
Good morning. Nicholas Singh. I'm with the Swansea Area Ratepayers Association. I do have a question.
Sir, are you speaking on your behalf or under the, as in conjunction with the letter we have as a representative of the Swansea Ratepayers?
As a representative of the Swansea Ratepayers.
Okay, thank you, sir. Welcome. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a question about the changes we've just been presented with. It seems that some of the height variances have been removed. I don't know why they've been removed unless the plans have been changed. If these variances were according to the plans, I'd like to understand how this doesn't affect the plans. Before, I don't know what to address. I mean, if the plans are remaining the same.
I assume, sir, the what you're commenting on is the variances in the public notice, subject to the items.
Yeah, you cut out there. I've lost you. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I hit the mute button. So I guess comment on what's before us on the notice, subject to what Mr. Ajvan advised at the beginning of his presentation. He removed certain variances being 4, 5, 6, 10, 14, and the last sentence in item number 9. So that's what I would go with.
All right, I'll do my best. The other thing I'd like to clarify.
Any questions will be addressed by Mr. Ajvan at the end of all of the comments from the neighbors.
Okay, the other thing I'd like to clarify is the support letters. I understand these came after the deadline. Are they before the committee?
Are you asking me? It looks like we have support letter that came in the additional package. I have a note of 3 in the additional materials yesterday. Staff, perhaps you can clarify what's before the committee here. I have to open up my additional materials. I believe there were 3 letters in these additional materials.
Letters in support, yes.
Okay, and the addresses for those letters, perhaps? I don't have it open on my screen.
1 second.
Okay, so perhaps you can proceed
62
and,
Cole Hill. A 118-107 the Queensway and 118-107 the Queensway.
okay, thank you.
All right, those are before the committee. I understand then.
Yep.
All right. So in addressing some of the materials that have been produced then later on, the letters, as been mentioned, do come from people who don't live in the immediate context. They are quite far away and in the apartment complexes further away. Regarding the comparison addresses that were offered in the supporting material, none of the 8 addresses put forward qualify under the official plan for comparison. They are not in the same block or opposite the address, and they're outside of the immediate neighborhood and the immediate context. And the closest one is all the way across Catfish Pond. If we do look at page 00 of the applicant's additional presentation, down in the left corner, you can see a photograph of the houses that would qualify for comparison, and none of these addresses were found by the applicant to support the proposal. And this actually demonstrates an important point that we're trying to make, is that this is an intact character area within Swansea, and the proposals will be quite disruptive. And this observation is repeated by the residents in their several letters. To review, the main points here is that this is an intact character area within Swansea. There are no homes that reflect this. If you take a look, walk down the street, you'll see that this part of the neighborhood is comprised of smaller homes, proudly cared for and maintained in a style that links these properties and this community together. It's one of the character areas within the former village of Swansea. Geographically, it is next to Catfish Pond, which is a public parkland along most of its banks. In the winter, it's frozen and supports skaters and a few hockey games. Together, the homes and the pond create an environment that's unique to the Swansea area and to the inner city. Transition to this unique part of the neighborhood is provided by space and roadways. To the north, we have green space and the bend in the road. They provide the transition from the low-rise apartment neighborhood to the upper part of Coe Hill. And to the south, we have the Queensway, the streetcar corridor, separating this part of Coe Hill from the high-rise neighborhood to the south, where you've got a couple of those letters. I think if you looked at the 2 pages of the plans, the graphics on the proposed buildings, you'll understand the dramatic change this proposal is going to impose on this section of the neighborhood. The proposed design requested has variances that are going to disrupt the character of the neighborhood, and it's going to be obvious in our view. These variances then cannot be minor. The impact is just too great. Let's see. Turning to the balcony. The balcony is prohibited by exception 961. 961 is a site-specific provision, and it prohibits this balcony as it is designed. The proposal doesn't seek to vary the exception, it seeks to set it aside. And in our opinion, that would not maintain the intent and purpose for the prohibition, and it would not pass a test for intent and purpose. Other reasons for refusing the balcony and the many associated variances that come with that balcony are massing, overlook, shadowing, and disruption to the area's character. This balcony and the associated variances should not be approved. Turning to the letters from the residents, we have quite a number, 8 from the residents, exclusive of the association's letter, and 6 more different signatures from Coe Hill and Ellis Garden residents. Ping Zhu to Coe Hill, who's concerned about size and character. Andreas Lopez at 7 Coe Hill was concerned about loss of character and enjoyment of property, loss of morning light, which he's experienced from some of the larger homes approved for the Queensway. Mr. Freddie Ung, I hope he can join us today. He did ask to speak. He was very concerned about the size and shadowing effects and loss of enjoyment, the difficulty of shadows causing him in his garden. You've heard from the family at 50 Coe Hill. Mr. Jim Brown is scheduled. Melanie and Alex Borboski, I don't know if they're scheduled, but they were concerned about massing, loss of views, disruption to the character of the area. I'll conclude at this point. The community is clearly speaking to the committee about the impact the proposal will have, and I'm sure you'll take their comments into consideration. Looking at the totality of the application, it creates a building envelope that's truly out of character with the neighboring homes, and it is undesirable, not minor, nor in keeping with the intent and purpose of the official plan and bylaws, and we do oppose the application. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Singh before we go on to the next speaker, Mr. Kumarik?
I'm not sure, sir, if you are able to sort of bring into context what's being eliminated now, but in the event that you are, the elimination of those 5 variances, does that impact on your opinion, or do you feel that that's still the same opinion?
Well, according to what we've been told, the drawings are not going to be affected, so the height still seems to be in effect. I don't know the reason why these have been withdrawn. Are they just an error, or is the design of the house actually going to be changed? If the design is not changing, as we've been told, you can see from one of the photographs that Cheryl Dan Paul showed you, the sunlight just barely goes over the ridge of the house next door as it is now constructed. If the house is raised, as we understand it will be by the other
obviously it's going to be raised. There's obviously
variances.
going to be a second floor. I mean, that's
Sorry?
there's obviously going to be a second floor no matter what.
A second floor, yes. And if the height is going to be maintained at almost 10 meters, then yes, there will be a severe change to the shadowing and enjoyment of property for the people at 50 Coe Hill. So our concerns do remain, yes.
Okay. Just that, you know, when we look at the variances, we don't look at comparing to what is there now, but rather comparing to what is permitted. And it's that differential that we need to consider. But thank you for your clarifying.
I just have a comment after looking at Street View that it looks like the bulk, or at least half of the street, is 2-story. In fact, there are only 2 houses in between this particular proposal and the first 2-story house on that street. Is that correct?
Well, most of them are about, I think, 1.5 stories, and some of them are just bungalows. Some of them have been modified to create space upstairs, but if you look at the character of the neighborhood and the type of homes that are there, they're pretty consistent along the stretch of Coe Hill.
Yeah, there's one stretch that's bungalow. Then there's a 1.5 story, and then they're all 2 stories after that. Anyway, that's what it looks like on Street View to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singh again. So if anyone have any questions, anyone else have any questions for Mr. Singh? If not, we'll hear from the next speaker, which is the neighbor on the other side, 46 Coe Hill, Melanie or Alex Bobrowski.
Melanie or Alex, go ahead. Mr. Chair and members, Melanie and or Alex are a call-in user, and I have unmuted them at this time. Melanie or Alex, you're live and can speak now. Melanie or Alex, please make sure you do not mute or unmute yourself. Let city staff be responsible for that. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Melanie, go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Melanie, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Melanie.
Mr. Chair, the call-in user keeps muting and unmuting themselves.
For us who live on Coal Hill. Hello, can you hear me?
Melanie, we can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me right now?
Please start your presentation.
Yes. For us who have been living on Coal Hill and enjoying it almost for half a century, my husband and I, it's been a peaceful area to live in. Yes, we've had some problems with the back, with Swansea Mews and the foundation. My concerns are two. How will this affect the properties of the other people? For example, how will my home be affected? This is soft ground. It's all sand. It's a high water table. Houses that have been built here before, some of them have collapsed halfway through the build, and they had to be rebuilt. I'm concerned mostly about the effect on our home, especially, and on Cheryl's home with the build. How will the water be drained from the property? How will that affect the pounding of the homes on our side? The driveway, will that collapse? And also, who will be responsible if there is damage so that my driveway sinks as the weight of their home starts sinking my property, cracking my home, which has happened in this area. Homes have been demolished due to other people building homes that were too large and have been demolished, as I'm saying. So, Mike, I am all for Monash and Puja doing what they want with their own money, enjoying their property. But this is not enjoyable. This is stackable housing. It's like stacking things on top, stacking people. Intensification is good, but not when it's pitting people who have been in their homes for many, many years. And now the city, the province, is instilling laws it's starting to cause emotional upset in so many millions of people who own properties in this province. And you are the gatekeepers of making sure that it doesn't pit neighbor against neighbor. So when you get out on your driveway, you don't say, now we say hello, we say good morning. How will this affect all of us when there's such opposition from the two neighbors on both sides and on the street? This is setting a precedent for others. And how soon will it be there's another monstrous, variance of homes to build triplexes, sixplexes, which the city will be happy because they're getting their taxes. But you are the gatekeepers. Please do the right thing for the people that have to live, sleep, eat, and live in these homes. And I'm sorry about my emotion, but that's the way I feel. This is starting to become a disruptive, stackable city, not a pleasant city to be living in. And I still love it, and I still will stay here. And just think of the ramifications of how this will affect my relationship with Monash and Puja and how Cheryl will be affected. We're going to get out on our driveways and not even look at each other. Hello?
Yeah, we're listening.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I know I have some time, and I meant to be calm and cool. And I went into Monash and Puja's home on a Sunday when they called me. Wonderful people, educated people. But that's not what I was told. That isn't, and I'm not an architect. I don't understand any of those technicalities that you're looking at. All I understand is what is it going to look like? How is it going to make us all feel? How is the whole neighborhood going to change? How will it be within 2 years? They're going to want to build a triplex, a sixplex? Because once you start variating things, why not go even further? You will be setting a precedent. I'm begging you, the gatekeepers of mental health in this city, for neighbors to get along with each other, to not allow this the way it is. They can build their second story, but not the way that it looks. And Monash and Puja, I love you guys, but please, please don't do this. How will you enjoy your home knowing that your neighbors have been so upset over what you've been proposing?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bobrowski.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Bobrowski before we go on to the next speaker? And Ms. Bobrowski, the applicant or his agent will be responding to your concerns after we've heard from all of you. Anyone have any questions for the current speaker? Right next door at 46. Okay, if not, well, next speaker on our list, I think we have the same letter in our materials, and again in our additional materials, is Anna Iwanishin.
Mr.
And I'd like to know what her address, I don't think there was an address in what her letter, and said resident of Swansea.
Mr. Chair and members, Anna is not present on the call at this time. We did reach out to them to try and attempt to make communication, but we have not heard back at this time.
Okay, and it looks like the next speaker is Cleona Don Paul at 1638 Bloor Street West, listed as not an area resident interested to speak on this matter. I note she has the same last name as the neighbor at 50, who's we heard from Cheryl. So I don't know if there's some relation there. We'll hear from, but that's the next speaker on our list, Cleona Don Paul.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That is correct. I do have a relation to 50 Go Hill Drive. My current address is 1638 Bloor Street West. But today, as I mentioned, I do have a relation to 50 Go Hill Drive. It is my family home. Today, I'll be speaking in opposition of the proposed plan for 48 Go Hill Drive. As I mentioned, I will eventually become the benefactor of 50 Go Hill Drive, and therefore I do have a vested interest. I'd like to start off by saying I am incredibly concerned regarding the structure, as it is too large, it's too big, and too intrusive to fit the character of the neighborhood. All of these do not fit in accordance with the 4 tests. I'd also like to point out that Go Hill Drive in and of itself is a small, unique street. The existing house does sit in the middle of a row of bungalows across from Catfish Pond and is on a direct access to a bus route. Specifically speaking, this 48 Go Hill Drive is about a house away from that bus stop. And as a result, this proposed development would negatively impact my family home since it would tower over it. As you saw in the sketch, it does tower over my home. Point being that it is essentially blocking out all direct sunlight from the southern side of my home. Now, my mother and my recently retired father thoroughly enjoy their time outdoors, and they do have a real passion for gardening and keeping up with yard maintenance. I myself also enjoy spending quality time with them in our garden, and this proposed build would essentially obstruct the sunlight in our backyard garden, and views to the south would just be a massive wall. Of course, this would negatively impact our enjoyment of our home. Another concern I'd like to bring forward is that the first floor platform that extends towards the front yard, it also protrudes towards the north side of the build, which is an overhang pushing towards my family home. This impact would be an obstruction of views from the main floor, and of course, it would raise overlook and privacy concerns. In addition, speaking with our neighbors, many residents have shared their concerns, and I'd just like to point out that these are homeowners that live on Go Hill Drive, as indicated in the number of submissions objecting to the proposed build. The neighbors have overwhelmingly noted that the change was not desirable and did not maintain appropriate relationships between the buildings. Lastly, I just wanted to conclude, and I wanted to remind everyone involved that what we're dealing with here is an interpretation, I guess you can say, between something that is referred to as a minor variance, which in this case is not. This is major, and in my opinion, any variance that has a long-term negative effect on adjacent neighbors, including my family home, which we have occupied for over 20 years, for an extended period of time, is not a minor adjustment or a minor variance. I understand the need for densification, however, within reason and within bylaws. I think many of these variances that we're dealing with today fall into that category and will lead to a lesser quality of life, well-being, and personal enjoyment of one's property. I'd like to thank the committee for hearing me out today. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleona. Does anyone have any questions for speaker? And if not, we have one more speaker listed, Elizabeth Chmielewski at 54 Go Hill Drive.
Elizabeth, you've noted that you'd like to show yourself on camera. As such, you've been bumped to the panelist section. Therefore, you are able now to turn on your camera if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm just sitting in today watching. I requested to be able to speak with you.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you cut out there. If you could restate that comment. Elizabeth.
Sorry, I requested to be able to and see the, I got this letter very late. I was away. So I wanted to sit in and get caught up on the situation. I didn't ask to speak.
Okay, so Ms. Chamelski, if you're just observing and you don't wish to speak, that's fine. We had a lot of other neighbors speak. You may have been listening. So if you do not want to speak, it's certainly you don't have to. So in that case, you were the last speaker on our list. So we'll go back to the agent for the applicant, Mr. Ajvand, to respond to the concerns of the neighbors.
Thank you for that. I try to be as brief as possible and as fast as possible because there are several items. Just before going through the items that neighbor addressed, I just want to say that the variance number 9 is not eliminated. Actually, it's improved. The requested variance for the rear deck has been eliminated. For the front deck, we still have that variance for variance number 9. I heard the neighbors' concern, and also my client approached most of them, and we already knew those kind of concern. And I want to say that how we could address those things. The first thing is, I believe that it is common in all heard concern is regarding the height. If I can have the proposed plan on the screen, and actually the page A0203, I just want to explain this elimination of the height variances and also the shadow concern. It was just a graphic of the drawing that caused this misinterpretation. Can I have those side elevation, or if the committee panel can take a look at those side elevation? There is like a continuous roof and wall over there. The way that the graphic of drawing was there, it was like it was true that caused this misinterpretation. Everyone, even including zoning examiner, thought that it is a wall all the way to the peak of the roof, which is not correct. Our wall gonna be to the level of underside of soffit that we indicated over there in 3D view, and also in the supportive document I showed them correctly. That's why we don't have any wall height variance number 4, 5, 6. Actually, we are 20 centimeter less than what we are allowed. Allowed wall height over there is 7 meter. We are proposing 6.8 meter. And as I said, the total height variance is just for that small triangle over there, which I believe that considering, comparing with the as of right option, what zoning bylaw allowed us, we definitely don't have any shadowing issue, as one of the committee panel truly indicated that these comparisons should be between as of right to proposed, not existing to the proposed. And in terms of the second story is allowed, the wall height we are comply over there. This is regarding how those variances are eliminated to avoid any confusion for the neighbor and also the committee panel. Regarding the balcony, actually, we came a long way. This project was a bit personal for me as well, because I'm living in a neighborhood, not immediate neighborhood, but we go over there and enjoying the area with my kids. So I know the neighborhood so well. That's why we try to reduce any massing of this balcony. It is interesting that to mention, if these balconies wasn't accessible from the second floor, it would fall under the definition of canopy, and some of those variants automatically were eliminated because the canopy is allowed, but the platform have access is not allowed. That's why I mean, in terms of massing, it's not that much. Even on the supportive document, if I can have the third page of supportive document over there, we try to reduce the massing situation of that by opening the wall, the side wall. Basically, the canopy that we have is just a post, just a structural post or cosmetic post over there. And one of the last neighbor had issue with overlooking, although I believe that is not applicable because the front deck is looking to the public space. The front yard is always public space, but my client is more than happy to propose the privacy screen, 3 feet 6 inches or 4 feet high privacy screen over there. If it's addressed their concern, we will be okay if you consider it as a condition in the potential approval. If you do that. Regarding the our immediate neighbor at 46 Cohill, yeah, we are well aware of the condition of this area regarding the, I know it's not related to the committee, but I just want to address it on a hearing as something official. We know about the high water table, we know about the soil capacity over there, and that's why we didn't change anything on the building footprint over there. We try, you know, from our first document, we consider those situations. That's why the existing footprint is as it is, and we already know about that. Although my client want to do the underpinning, increase the height of basement, but we eliminate that one because it's not possible. And definitely the Toronto building will govern it closely to avoid any damage or any harm to the public safety and also our neighbor. And you know, the neighbor said regarding the Philippine. As I said, my client living over there for 10 years. And the way that we design it is 100% customized for them with their 4 senior parents living with them. Just one other item, if I have enough time, it was regarding the address of you know, those neighbor attending, supporting us. It is, you know, something over there in a petition that proposed by the association. For example, 797 Jane is not related to our address, or 2 Cohill Road, which signed the petition, is at the Queensway and Cohill, which is far away from our proposal. Or 73 Cohill is an apartment building too. Or those kind of things is, you know, something that's matter for me at this stage. I try to address those technical concerns. I talked about the height variance and the shadowing. Definitely, I can say, considering the as of right option, we don't do anything more aggressive than as of right option, considering the wall height is lower than existing. That's all.
If please wrap up, sir. Mr. President, please wrap up. You're over 5 minutes.
I'm done. I just want to say, if committee decided to approve this application, we are okay to propose the privacy screen on both sides of the front deck. We are proposing to address to make our neighbor happy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ajvan or any of the other speakers? Or if not, let's
Chair,
bring
your
this
video
matter-
is off.
Miss
Mr. Ajvan, or for any of the other neighbors?
Sorry, you muted yourself, Mr. Chair, but your video is off.
Mr. Chair, at this time, you are muted and your video is off.
Hello?
You are unmuted, but your video is still
Hello?
off at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it shows that I'm on. It shows I'm on. I can turn it off and on again, but start video. I'm back. In any event, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ajvan? And if not, let's bring the matter into committee for discussion or for a motion. Is everyone, can you really see and hear me now, or?
Mr. Chair, we can definitely hear you,
We can hear you.
but unfortunately, we're having bandwidth problems somewhere in the system, and so you're not being displayed on
anyway,
screen.
you don't have to see me. Everybody knows what I look like. So we can still continue without the video on me, I would imagine. So does anyone have
Can
any
you see
further
us, Mr.
questions,
Chair?
first of all?
Mr. Chair, can
Sorry?
you see us?
Yes, I can.
So if I put my hand up, would you notice?
Yes. There we go. Okay, your hand's up. My hand's up too, but you can go ahead.
Okay.
Ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll take a stab here. First, just a comment. It's unfortunate the applicant didn't pick up the unnecessity or lack of necessity of a number of these variance requests that appear to be glaringly problematic. The exterior main wall heights and back wall heights, and now that they're not on the table, you know, I think a lot of the angst and concern about this application would have been eliminated if those variances have been eliminated. But anyway, that's just a comment. They've been eliminated now. I think the key here is we have to compare what's proposed to what's permitted as of right, as has been alluded to. variance number one, on the surface of it, it looks to be significant, but again, we're only accommodating a 2,200 odd square foot house. I'm sure many of the houses on this street greatly exceed the 0.35 times lot area FSI. So I'm not concerned about that. The overall height of the building is it's less than a meter taller than the zoning bylaw permits. So I don't have a problem with that. So all in all, I find the variances do meet the 4 tests. And I would move approval of the request subject to the revisions, which are the elimination of variances 4, 5, 6, 10, and 14, and a revision to variance 9 to eliminate the rear second floor balcony. And there would be no conditions.
Okay.
Can I just ask if we can take the applicant up on his offer of privacy screens?
Just add it as a condition, if you want to second it.
Yeah, I would certainly agree.
I would
with
make
an
that as a
amendment.
friendly amendment then to that.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a motion and seconded
Can
with
we
friendly
be
amendment
specific
added
on
to the
what the
condition.
privacy screen is for, where, how high?
Usually it's 1.5, I believe, or
Yes, it's usually 1.5. And that is on the, obviously, second floor, but it's on the, is it at the front or the back of the property? I think it's at the front, is it not?
They're
Yeah,
talking
it's
about
front.
privacy screens on both sides.
At the front.
Okay, thank you.
okay, all in favor? It's unanimous. The application is approved. Thank you to all the neighbors for your input, and thank you to the applicant, and we'll proceed on to the next application, which is item number 6. We have a revised agenda page for the app for today's eliminating. It looks like there were variances. There are now 3. The front yard landscape ones have been eliminated. This is a constructed 2-story rear and south side addition and a rear yard deck. And we have the revised agenda. We have revised plans. We have photographs. Transportation has no condition. We have transportation was looking for a refusal, but my question to the applicant, we hear from the applicant, is whether it's still applicable, as variance 5 has now been eliminated, whether they're still in favor or whether that would eliminate their concern. And we have neighbors in support at 17 and 20 with respect to this request for a circular driveway. And I don't know about item number. People at 21. So we only have the one speaker. We do have, or 2 speakers for this. Yes, Drew Laszlo, the agent for the applicant, as well as the neighbors at 17 Chiltern Hill, either speaking in person or by their representative. So Mr. Laszlo, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Drew Laszlo, agent for the owner. If I may just kind of jump in, just to reiterate what was already said. Yes, we are eliminating variances 4 and 5. That is based on the transportation report. And that should satisfy them now, because those were the 2 variances that they had issue with. So now they are no longer. So now we are left with 3 variances, if I may put on a brief presentation.
1 second, Mr.
Variance
Laszlo.
number, I'm sorry?
The transportation report is asking that there only be 1 driveway access, and your plans don't address that. So their refusal report still stands.
Well, by eliminating variances 4 and 5, we 100% conform to having a circular driveway. So,
yeah, sir, I would.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Michael, you're muted.
Sorry. I think Mr. Laszlo is correct by the 2 access points are permitted if both A and B and the conditions are satisfied. So the frontage is more than 18 meters. That satisfies condition 1, but their complaint was that the proposed landscaping doesn't meet the minimum requirement, 60%, but now it appears that it does. So in which case I would agree with Mr. Laszlo that transportation's report can be considered no longer applicable. Am I correct? Is Mr. Laszlo correct? Do the committee members agree?
I agree.
Yeah, but the fact that he's now eliminated variance numbers, in particular, where is it here? Yeah, the landscape deficiency, he now qualifies. Since he now has gone up to 60% from the 46.08, he's entitled to that. Now he's entitled to it. He meets the criteria. Do any of the members wish to weigh in on that interpretation?
I would agree with your interpretation.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have the letter from 17 in support. And we do have the neighbor registered from 17 to speak. And we also have the neighbor at 20. I was asking about what happened to the neighbor at 21. Perhaps Mr. Laszlo, while other members consider that the transportation refusal condition no longer applies. What's the position of the neighbor at 21?
Number 21, we actually have a letter of support from number 21.
Oh, yes, I see. Sorry, that's in our additional materials.
Correct.
Oh, right, but the neighbor, yeah, someone said the neighbor at 17 was in support, but they're not. We have a specific letter.
If I may,
the future owners. Oh, I see. The current owner who's leaving is in support.
Correct.
The people at Menin who are registered to speak, either Glickman or Lane, they are opposed. They are the future owners. They currently live on Menin and are the future owners effective, I think, December, pursuant to agreement of person sale.
Correct.
Okay. So does anyone have any further questions for Mr. Laszlo, or Mr. Laszlo, if you want to continue your presentation? I can't remember if you wanted to say anything else, and then we'll hear from the neighbor, the future neighbor.
And for my presentation, I was just going to briefly summarize the 3 remaining variances. Variance number 1, 67% FSI. We are requesting where 40% is permitted. 67% is generally more than acceptable for the neighborhood. And at this point in time is actually considered to be quite low for the neighborhood as far as FSIs are concerned. Variance number 2 has to do with the south side yard setback. We conform to the north setback for the proposed addition, and we are just asking for approximately 6 inches of encroachment into the required south side setback. Variance number 3, the final variance is for a rear yard setback. We're required to be slightly over 8 meters. We're asking for 5.58 meters. That is really, if you take a quick look at the site plan or survey, you will see that there is this kind of crank, as I like to call it, at the rear of the property. So it's really just due to this irregularity of the property that is calling into play this rear yard setback variance. It's almost technical in nature. That's how I see it.
Okay, so the only significant variance is the FSI at 0.67, formerly being on the City of York when it was a city back in the early 90s, mid 90s. That 0.67 is rather modest in today's context. It'd be interesting to hear from the neighbors when they speak as to what the FSI is of their home. So does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Laszlo, or we can hear from the neighbor or the representative? Okay, no one has any questions. Is either Amy or Glicksman or Dan Lane on the line?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and
future owners, or
I'm going to unmute Amy at this time.
Okay.
Amy, you've also made note that you'd like to have yourself shown on screen. As such, I've moved you over for that option now, so you can go ahead and turn on your camera if you'd like. Amy,
Can
go
you
ahead.
hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Amy Glucksman. I'm actually going to be the future neighbor in about 5 weeks of time. I understand that there is a letter signed from the last owner at 17 Chiltern Hill, but I'd actually like the committee to consider it invalid. It was signed by what will be soon be the former neighbor at a time when his house was actively listed for sale. This owner had no intention of ever living there with the extension present and affecting the property. He actually signed it the same day he sold his home to us. So I don't think that is considered a valid
Yeah,
support.
Ms. Blitzman, I wouldn't worry about that. Committee is aware of the situation. You're the future owner in a couple of weeks. So I would agree that your concerns are valid. If you're going to let us know if you know also what the FSI is of your home, your new home, to be whether you would agree with the photo attached to Mr. Laszlo's in our package showing the extent of the addition is sort of an accurate portrayal. So please go ahead. Don't worry about the fact that Mr. Halpern, who's soon not going to be there, said he had no concerns.
Yeah, I would assume that our floor, like our FSI, is probably much lower given that we have a deeper lot. My concern is that the new extension actually goes very deep into their lot and will go beyond the posterior wall of my home and then beyond the porch and then beyond that. We actually met with the neighbors yesterday so that they could show us exactly where it is, and it is extensively deep. It leaves us staring into a large, mostly blank wall. There's almost no windows, there's nothing there. For a very significant portion of the length of the backyard and our home, it's going to be an almost featureless wall, and it's pretty relentless. To me, that's not a minor variance the way the architect described it. To me, it's a far too extensive increase in coverage for the size of this lot and has a significant negative impact upon my family when we live there. I do also want to mention that we did send 2 letters, not one, but 2, to the owners of 19 Chiltern asking them to speak about our concerns, but we didn't hear back about our concerns until yesterday, and we asked for a deferment of the meeting until a resolution could be reached, but they declined.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, or is that the extent of your?
No, my big concern is about how deep this is going to go and the relentlessness of this very blank wall that's going to be present.
Okay, so we'll hear from Mr. Laszlo in response. Does anyone have any questions for the speaker at this, Mr. Kumarik?
I just have a comment. I was trying to look at that concern on the site plan, and it's not possible to do that because the site plan does not show either of the 2 houses in totality. It only shows the front end. So just a comment for the applicant. It would be helpful to the committee to see the full impact of the immediate neighbors by actually showing how the immediate neighbors' houses look in relation to what you're proposing. So I'll be asking him to comment on that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I see we're looking at the revised plan. It shows the extent of that. That's why I'm saying it's Mr. Laszlo or someone provided a photo, like an overhead satellite image or showing the extent of which sort of doesn't show the full rear yards, but if you look at a location map, they are a little tight in there around the corner. But that is the situation. I think if you look at the location map and the photo provided with the blue outline, the proposed addition, I think you get a pretty decent idea. And perhaps Mr. Laszlo can draw us to something else. Okay, no other questions? Then let's move to Mr. Laszlo for his rebuttal.
Yes, thank you very much for that. If planning staff could put up the survey, a copy of the survey, please. That will, then I can clearly point out the extent of the proposed addition. While that's happening, there we go. Okay. Okay, so if you look at the more towards the bottom, if planning staff could scroll up to see the house to the south, correct. So you can see the house to the south, that's towards the bottom of the page. You can see the outline of the house itself. At the back, there is a rear deck with, angled line. You can see the stairs going up to the rear deck. Our proposed addition will go the extent of that rear deck. I believe it's plus or minus a foot of where that deck ends. So that will give the committee members a better idea of how deep their proposed addition will be. As far as the comments from the neighbor, so I think we can all agree that it is normal to have one house, like to see one house deeper than another house. The adjacent house is approximately 32 feet deep or 9.7 meters deep. What I'm thinking, and again, up to the committee members if they agree or not, I don't believe that should necessarily dictate how deep our house is, or the proposed addition goes. Just because the neighbor's house is 32 feet, I don't believe we should necessarily be limited to 32 feet. We do conform to the length of dwelling bylaw. We conform to the depth of dwelling bylaw. We conform to the wall height bylaw, the overall roof height bylaw, and we're actually over 2.5 meters lower than what's permitted as far as wall height and overall roof height. So that kind of minimizes the impact on the adjacent property a bit more. And we also step back just slightly. The portion of our addition that goes beyond the neighboring house, number 17, beyond their house, we actually step that back to over 4 feet, so we conform to the side yard setback requirement. Let me just see. Planning staff had no objections to this proposal. I believe it meets the 4 tests. And if there's any questions, I, of course, would be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
And obviously, the committee is aware that we look at what's permitted, not what's on the next property. So I don't believe you have any length or depth, and you've explained your rear yard situation. So unless anyone has any further questions, let's bring it into committee for a decision, unless there's some follow-up questions for either of the speakers. Taylor. Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move approval without conditions.
Thank you. You have a seconder for that. Mr. Komorak. All in favor? The application is unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Laszlo. Thank you, Ms. Glicksman. And we can move on to the next item, which looks like we only have one speaker on. Item number 7, 873 Bathurst Street. This is an application. Sorry, does someone want to say something? 873 Bathurst. It's an application to permit a medical office and to construct a 1-story rear addition with a rear entrance for the medical office use. No parking spaces will be provided. There are 3 variances. And we have a previous decision from February 2005, which permitted the conversion of the ground floor into a doctor's office. And transportation has no objection. That's all we have. And the speaker is Frank Alamo, agent for the applicant.
Yes, good morning. My name is Frank Alamo. I'm the agent for the property owner, Mr. Ng. My address is 27 Roytech Road in Vaughan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. As mentioned, this application is an extension and an increase to the existing ground floor use as previously approved by committee back in 2005, and you have the file number there. The property is a 3-story brick semi-detached dwelling with a 1-story wood frame addition in the rear. Back in 2005, the committee approved the minor variance to allow the use, but it be restricted to the ground floor only, and it maintain a floor area no greater than 76.58 square meters. The current committee of adjustment application is to extend the ground floor area only from the 76.58 square meters to 104.81 square meters. This will be achieved with the demolition of the existing one-story frame structure which is about 9.29 square meters in the rear of the property, and it will be replaced with a new one-story brick structure of 37.55 meters.
Okay, sir, I don't think we need to hear any further from you on this application. We have the approval back in 2005. I see. I was actually I was on the committee at that time. Not that I remember it. So let's just see if anyone has any questions or someone's ready for a motion. As you say, the use was permitted back some 17 years ago.
Just one quick thing. My apologies. I didn't realize that this was, in fact, I'm a patient at this clinic, so I'm not sure if that means I have a conflict of interest or not. I just realized it now. So it's up to staff to decide that, I guess.
You have to decide that.
All right, well then I'll just declare a conflict of interest because I am a patient of that clinic.
Okay. Again, it's an unopposed application for not to prejudge what's happening with this decision, but thank you for pointing that out. The fact that, you know.
I apologize, I didn't realize it until now.
Not a problem. Okay, does anyone have any questions then for the speaker? We've heard from him whether there's any issues or whether someone's ready to weigh in with a motion. I see there are no conditions being requested by anyone.
Palmer here. No comments from me. I'm not a patient at this clinic. It's in a decent area with good public transit, and I don't see any negative impacts from extending the use to the remainder of the property. So I will move for approval, being that the variances requested are minor in nature and meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act.
Okay, thank you.
And that's, I just want to make sure and no conditions. Thank you.
Okay, seconded for that. Mr. Komorik, thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous. You have your approval. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is item number 8, 782 Salmon Avenue. It's an application to establish a front yard parking space. And there is one variance, just a soft landscaping deficiency of 1.88 square meters. And the speaker for this is Stephanie Barrington, the owner of the property, and also registered to speak as the neighbor, Ben McHenry at 806
Mr.
Salmon
Chair and
Avenue.
members, I'd like to bring to your attention the area resident is not present on the call at this time. We have reached out to them to try and make communication, but they have not responded.
Okay, it looks like they're located quite a number of properties away at 806.
Oh, hello.
Yes.
Hi, it's
So
Stephanie.
we'll go to, so we have Stephanie Barrington on the line. Very straightforward application. And if I can just continue with my presentation or my introduction. Transportation is no objection. We have support from CIMIT 84. And planning is asking that this application be refused. So let's hear from Stephanie Barrington, the owner.
Mr. Chair, can we just get a clarification from staff? I believe transportation is suggesting that the individual should apply under the Boulevard Parking Program rather than going through this process. Is that correct?
Yes, so the majority of the parking space is located on city property. So they would probably have to do that anyway.
Right, so are we in a position to do an approval if it's on city property anyway?
It's been identified as a variance, I think partially because a portion of the parking space is located within the subject property, but a very tiny portion.
Okay, I was just confused by that, but okay.
And I apologize in my introduction. I had a note here, is transportation OBJ, which means objection, but it's usually no objection. So they do have an objection. Thank you, Mr. Clemeric, for clarifying that. And we have to ask the applicant whether she should be proceeding. The parking objects. They object to the application and they recommend you apply for parking space under the parking on the city boulevard instead. Ma'am, you don't have an agent representing you or a planner? Do you made this application on your own?
I don't have an agent representing me. I did have a planner do my drawings for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I am a newbie to this process, which I find quite confusing, but.
Right. So did you see this? You said, I don't know if you received a letter dated October 20th.
Yeah, I did see that.
When you received that, did you call anyone to find out or ask your planner who helped you with your drawings what that meant? Because it appears that maybe perhaps you should not be proceeding this way. If Mr. Clemeric and the other members are not.
Yeah. Okay. I was not advised by the architect who did my drawings.
Perhaps in the circumstances, Stephanie and Madam Secretary Treasurer, we should just defer this matter until we can straighten out rather than refuse it or.
Can I just add a couple of things? So directly across the street and directly adjacent to this particular property, there are front yard parking pads.
That's
correct.
So
I'm just putting it out there.
Doesn't tell us how it was obtained or whether they're even
legal, but yeah, the one directly across the street is relatively new. It looks like new construction.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Alderson, for being our Google Map checker. I think it's very helpful to have someone during the hearing take a look at that great thing that we have. We used to actually go do site visits.
784 also has a parking pad, and I think that's part of the reason why I essentially need more space to even drive into my shared driveway. And
if I can ask, how did you come to make this application? Did you get a parking ticket for parking on your property, or did someone? Why did you make this application? Just to be good, you're gonna.
Because I've got such a thin driveway to drive through to get back to my parking spot that's in my backyard.
Right, so you want to build a parking pad in the front so you don't have to do that and squeeze between the two houses.
Well, it's not even that actually. It's that I need more space to drive through. It's the tightest drive through right now because I've got my neighbor at 784 who has a parking pad, and then I've got my soft landscaping, and then I have street parking where almost always there's a car parked there and it's parked very close to where my curb is. And so I have to make almost a 90-degree turn to get into my laneway. So that's the main reason. And then when people are unloading in my driveway, there's no space. I have a brother and a walker and an elderly mother, and I'm just asking for.
Stephanie, no one's disputing you have, and your neighbor, I'm just reading, your neighbor wrote and said, that's great. It makes her life easier also. But the issue is we're hearing is that because of where you want to do that, and mainly on city property, that this is not the proper way. Transportation is against that, as is planning for that reason, as set out in their report. So why don't we defer this matter, and you can look into it with the appropriate people to find out if that's the best course of action. Unfortunately, you've already brought this application and paid a fee, and the staff has done the work. So that's another issue. But the question is how to best get you what you're looking for, as Mr. Clemeric.
Also advise the applicant to double check your site plan, because your survey shows a side yard setback of 1.02 meter. But your site plan shows 1.5 something. So your site plan appears to be inaccurate and may also affect your landscaping figure.
So you may have additional variants that you don't have listed here in any case, provided that's the way you're going to proceed. You come back, that there may be, did you have a pre-PPR? Did you have staff identify the variances here? Or again, if your survey, whether it was shown in the survey or not. In any event, I think we have to defer if members agree. Can I have a motion to agree? We have a long day ahead of us still. So if we're not going to make a decision, we might as well. Thank you, Ms. Alderson. Seconder for that.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair. May I add that I think the applicant needs to consult community planning department as well. They took issue with this application.
Yes.
So I would see the homework is deal with transportation, deal with planning, and deal with the completeness of the variances required.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very good direction. So we have a motion seconded, all in favor. It's unanimous. The application is being deferred. So thank you, Ms. Barrington. You can look into that. Okay. Next application is item number 9, 63 Strathern Road. And
hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on, Mr. Pfeiffer. Mr. Pfeiffer, hold on a second. I haven't heard from you in a while. I know that's you. I just want to do a quick introduction. So this is an application to construct a new cabana in the rear yard of the under construction 3-story detached dwelling that was approved by a previous Committee of Adjustment hearing back in July 28, 2021 with 13 variances. We have supplemental material, cover letter, supporting material, sorry. An arborist report. TRC has no objection. And that's what we're here for. A previous approval that did not include a cabana, and they want to have a cabana, and there's no other speakers. We have a cover letter from Mr. McCow, arborist report, and the previous decision. And as I said, TRC has no comments. Mr. Pfeiffer, welcome.
Hi, yeah, Jim Pfeffer from 3 Bridgman Avenue in Toronto. I tried to do this earlier, but we'd like a deferral, and the deferral is because we had submitted a waiver, but not all of the variances we had listed on our waiver made it into the notice of hearing that was mailed out. I corresponded with Adam, who I see as a co-host here on this matter.
Okay, so you need to defer in order to clarify that you have all the variances are before us as required to accommodate this cabana.
Correct.
Beautiful house under construction. So members, can we have a motion to defer, please?
I'll make that. I thought this was going to be probably the only straightforward application of the day, but I'm going to make a motion for deferral.
Okay, thank you. Seconder for that, Mr. Palmer, all in favor. Okay, Mr. Pfeiffer, we'll see. Well, maybe we won't see you back here because we're just pinch hitting. We're the normal York Tobacco panel, but good to hear your voice again. Thank you, sir. So we can get this matter back on an agenda once you're ready to go and identify all the variances. Okay, so having said that, we can move over. Let's do item number 10, and perhaps we should be breaking for lunch after that, having made it halfway through. 103 Abbott Avenue, it's to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage and a new 2nd and 3rd story rear decks. There are 2 variances. We have support from 123 Indian Road Crescent and 100 Abbott's. We have concern from 101 with the 2nd floor deck that purports to be there appears to be, if I want to hear from the applicant, a private agreement. We have a couple of speakers here between the applicant and the neighbor. Doesn't appear to be signed, but in any event, that's what's before us. We have the 2 variances. We have the urban forestry and the additional materials, and the speaker is Wojtek Stanizek, the owner, and as well as we have the neighbors from 101 Abbott and 61 Beresford Crest Avenue registered to speak.
Mr. Chair, before we go into the agent, I'd like to bring to your attention that the owner at 61 Beresford Avenue, Chezery, is not present on the call at this time. I will keep you posted if they do join the call, though.
Okay, thanks. So let's hear from Wojtek.
Yes. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Wojtek Stasieszek. I am not the owner of the property, but I represent owners of the property, of this property. I am designer. So the purpose of this application to the committee is addressing two comments from zoning examiner. It's the first FSI, where is 8087 proposed, where only 06 is allowable, and second proposed height 945 meters, where only 7.5 meters is allowable. I would like to explain that property owners were planning to build a home that matches architectural style to the immediate neighboring houses located at 101 Abbott Avenue and 97 Abbott Avenue. So those houses look like twins. Both of those houses were inspiration for the homeowners to design 103 Abbott Avenue in a similar modern architectural style. Additionally, both of these houses have been approved by the respective committees of adjustment with more and bigger variances than we applied for. Approval documents were delivered to committee members. It was impossible to achieve desired architectural style without almost, I express this verb, almost matching the height and size of the neighbor model buildings. When we show proposed architecture for 103 Abbott Avenue to other immediate neighbors, we received warm support for our undertaking to enhance the beauty of the street. Supporting letters attached. So that's why from our point of view, this minor variance makes sense because this over 100 years old house is going to be torn down anyway. That's why we ask committee members for approval. So basically, so this is the statement regarding this application. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, sir. We now have the neighbor next door registered to speak. We have a letter from them. We have a letter from them. Can I finish what I'm saying, sir? We have a letter from them dated August 7th, where it appears to be sort of a letter agreement to be signed with you, and it's been prepared by the neighbors, and they've signed it and submitted it to you. It looks like we don't deal with private agreements, just to point out. But the question is, there's some indication in there about certain things that you've agreed to do. So my question is that this something that you've agreed to with the neighbors?
Yes, I already agree with neighbors. Yes, because I spoke with them, and also the proposed development is the house is shorter and they have no access to. I have no access. We have no access to see their balcony and their rear because it's shorter. We changed the design gently to answer the question. So the other question is some landscaping. So this is not an issue because I agree with those neighbors. Yes, I have this letter. Yeah.
Okay. So you have that letter. And the question is, we're going to hear from them. And so you signed that letter. It was dated. The one we've been given is not signed by you. It's signed by them. We don't normally get involved with that, but it looks like their support for you is subject to you agreeing to these things set out in this letter. Okay. So let's now hear from them. You're saying you've agreed to this. I don't know, or you're sort of. It says I don't know if you can sign it because you're not even the homeowner. You're the agent. So I don't know if you can bind. But whether your client has signed this letter. In any event, let's hear from. Does anyone have any questions? First of all, for Mr. Stasieszek before we move on and hear from the neighbors. No one has any questions? Okay, so let's hear from the neighbors.
Mr. Chair and members, we have both Wendy and David on the call this time, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute Wendy. Wendy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And yes, there is a letter that my spouse David and I prepared for Wojtek with the understanding that there are certain conditions that be met and we would consider supporting this application. Now, just to highlight, our biggest concern is about the second floor balcony It looks directly into our yard and impairs our privacy. In addition to that, we actually spoke to our landscaper and designer to see if there were solutions to help remedy our concerns about privacy, because that would be the condition that we wanted, is that if we could find a solution to remedy that, we would support it. So based on our discussions with the landscaper and designer, there doesn't seem to be an appropriate solution to fully alleviate our concerns. In addition, we did speak to our real estate agent as well, because we also want to make sure somewhere down the road, if we were to decide to sell our home, we don't want the optics of having privacy concerns impair the value of our home and our marketability. And our agent did express concern that this would be an issue for potential buyers. And so as a result, we are of the mind to oppose that one particular feature. We do support Wojtek's application for building a 3-story home. I mean, we have a 3-story home right beside him. We have no concerns about the 3rd floor balcony because it is receded far back enough, and where it is, there is no visible concerns around privacy, and we do have a 3rd floor balcony as well, and we do know, in fact, you can't see into the yard, but it is a 2nd floor balcony that is very visible from our backyard. And you know, as much as it's receded, it's the angle of the balcony that will just look right into our yard. The other thing I just wanted to raise as well is that, you know, again, we want to be very supportive as a neighbor. We were under the understanding that Wojtek was the owner, and he did indicate that he was not going to keep the property for more than 2 years. And for us, you know, this modification is impacting our livelihood, and we plan to stay in our home for a very long time. And which is why it becomes more of a priority for us to ensure that we enjoy and have the ability to enjoy our backyard.
Thank you. It looks like the owner is Aldan Inc. It's a corporation, so maybe, I don't know, maybe Wojtek is the you know, the shareholder of the corporation, but that's who who it is. I'm just looking. So you're saying you're now formally opposed to the second floor deck. I don't think it's specifically a variance, which it usually is if it's oversized, if it's 4 square meters. But it looks like you have an agreement, or you put in your letter. I don't know if he signed it. He just said when I asked him that he's agreed. That it's a little bit unclear, because to me, as a former lawyer, it's a little bit void. You say they will redesign, make it recess it more and make it smaller, but how much? So I don't know what agreement you've come to, but
No,
I'm just pointing out to members, it's not a variance. The size of the deck is not a variance. It doesn't appear to be anyway. Go ahead.
The agreement was that we raised our concerns, and you know, I apologize if the letter wasn't clear. It was that we raised our concerns and we would support this, provided that we would come to a solution that would remedy our concerns. And there has not been any solution that has remedied our concerns.
Okay, just to make that clear. So that's what I asked. This letter was not signed that you've submitted, or that someone submitted here. Even though you signed it August the 20th and your husband signed it, it's not signed. And also, to me, it's a little bit vague, because it says the deck will be modified from the current plans presented to us and further recessed and reduced in size. And then you say it'll be installed with frosted privacy glass all around, which is the second factor. And then we're talking about some trees to be bought and planted and who pays for them and things like that. But I'm just telling you, so it hasn't been signed, because if it was signed, it's a little bit void for uncertainty in any case. And my last comment, doesn't seem to be a variance, which typically it is if it's over 4 square meters. So perhaps we can hear back from Wojtek if it is an under 4 square meters. Okay, so do you have anything you'd like to add before we move on, Ms. Mizuno?
No, that's everything.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying what the status of this letter is that has been submitted. Okay, Mr. Stanizek, back to you. Can you please clarify who the owner of the property is and the status of disagreement and why we should approve this, notwithstanding the neighbor's objection to that second floor balcony as currently designed and currently recessed.
Yes, yes, there is no problem because I agree with the 101 Abbott Avenue owners, so that this will be done according to their request. So this is not an issue. So when I apply for a permit, so definitely I make this correction.
Okay, so you're saying when you applied, it already had a smaller second floor deck referred to in this August letter.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
thank you.
No problem.
Okay, you're the owner of the property through a corporation, or you're the agent for a third party owner?
So I am the agent of the owner, of the property owner.
Okay, so it's not you?
Not me, no.
Okay, you're not the principal of Aldan Inc. or whatever it is?
No. The preferred owner name is John Kurash.
Okay, because the neighbor is sort of saying that you told him that you're the owner. So, So anyway, was there anything you'd like to add in response to what Ms. Mizuno has to say, or I'll see if committee members have any questions or are ready to make a decision. Is there anything you'd like to respond?
Clarify for everyone, the conditions included in that letter are all things that are a civil matter. They're not conditions that the committee can really get involved in.
Yeah, I didn't imply that it was. I'm just saying that
I just wanted the neighbor to be aware of that.
Yeah, it's
About the
also
privacy
not
screens, though.
specified. Yeah,
What about the privacy screens? Can that be a condition of approval?
But the deck is not a variance. So we can't tie it to it. There's no variance to tie it.
There's no variance on the deck itself. Okay.
As I was saying, the disagreement is not something that's really before us. So I agree with Ms. Bartosik. That should sort of be ignored for all intents and purposes. Okay, is anyone ready for to make a decision on the two variances before us?
Mr. Chair, members, before we go into committee, I'd like to bring to your attention that the area resident, Cezary Zakarowski, is now on the call. If we'd like, we could have them speak.
Okay, I guess we should have him if he's gotten back on the line. He did pre-register. He is an area resident, and let's hear from 61 Beresford. Perhaps see where that is.
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, Cezary Mikhail Zacharowski here. I've been around this neighborhood about 35 years. I very well because I offer ICT-related services and computer-related services. I do know the owner of the property, Mr. Kurash. I do know the owner of the neighboring property, Mr. Sanders, and I do know Mr. Stasieczek because he knows Mr. Kurash. And I would strongly support this application because I've seen the drawings. They do match architecture of the buildings that are very nicely designed and neighboring this very property. And current house looks like a blemish rather than any part of this neighborhood.
Okay, so thank you, sir. And you live at 61 Beresford, which is somewhere, it doesn't show in my, it's not within proximity shown on my
anywhere
location
close
map.
to where we're talking.
Okay.
The circle of my services is much larger than that. So nevertheless, I know this neighborhood very well.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Any questions for the speaker or someone? If not, we can go back to Wojtek. I guess we still have to go back to Wojtek, right, to discuss what we discussed after we found out that the neighbor at 61 was now on the line who wasn't on the line previously. So Wojtek, you've had a chance to, you given him a chance to respond? I can't remember now.
Yes, of course. So this is supporting person. So it's they know this property, they know this issue, so they knows this area. So I think that his support is very.
And you're okay with having opaque screening on the deck, as Ms. Alderson was about to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I prepared the drawings for permit. So after consultants with the adjacent neighbor, yes. Yes.
Okay, your position is that you did in fact bring back the second floor, recess it more after that August letter in any event, but we did have Wendy on the line with concerns still. So members ready for a motion? If someone's ready to make a motion, unless you have some back follow-up question for either of the two speakers. Mr. Kamarick, thank you.
I'm fine to make a motion. I just want to make a comment that 61 Beresford is more than 2 kilometers away from the site, but that's here nor there. Being a former owner on Beresford Avenue. I find the application to be meeting the 4 tests and minor and desirable, and I would like to move approval subject to forestry condition 1.
Okay, thank you. Seconder for that motion? Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you, Ms. Mizuno, and thank you, Wojtek. Your application has been approved. It's now 1 o'clock, and we still have, we've made it halfway through our agenda. Madam Bartosik, how long should we be pausing for lunch break?
To be honest, I didn't think it would take this long to get through 20 items.
Me neither.
Yeah.
You want to pause till 2 p.m. or 2:15 or 2:30? Your call, based on what staff has.
We've already done
our vetting. Yeah, we've already done our sound check. So should we return at 2 p.m.?
Sure.
Okay. Have a good break, everyone.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if you can hear me. Yeah, if you can get a chance, if you can take a chance at some point over this hour to log out and log back in, maybe that could